Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Victoria Rooms here in Bristol. My name's John Simmons of the Bristol Zeitgeist Movement. What we've got today for you is we're going to start with a short introductory film that's going to introduce you to the concepts of the Venus Project, and then it'll be my pleasure to welcome on stage Roxanne Meadows, who is going to do the opening speech, followed later on by the radical thinker and futurist Jack Fresco. And after that, we'll take a question and answer session. Okay, so a big hand for Roxanne Meadows, who will be putting on a video demonstration.
We wanted to thank everyone for coming out this evening, and a special thanks to John and all the Zeitgeist members who made this event possible. We really appreciate it.
A nation without a vision of what the future can be is bound to repeat past errors over and over again. This brief video will outline a vision designed to avoid old mistakes. A vision of efficiency, sustainability, and intelligent planning can lead us into a marvelous new world of unlimited human potential. Designing the future. This vision could be a showcase of what the world can be in our cybernated age. Science and technology could be used for human betterment and the restoration and protection of the environment, serving as an example of the intelligent application of a systems approach. While some people advocate the restoration of existing, worn-out cities, these efforts fall short of the potentials of modern technology. Repairing outmoded cities results in higher costs of operation and maintenance. It is actually less expensive in the long run to build newer cities from the ground up than to restore and maintain old ones. A total city system approach requires overall planning to attain a higher standard of living for all the city's occupants. The circular arrangement efficiently permits the most sophisticated use of available resources and construction techniques with a minimum expenditure of energy. This can make available to all people the most advanced amenities that modern science and technology can provide. It could be the hub and learning center where people from all over the world visit and hopefully emulate this design approach in other parts of the world. Design considerations for these new cities include its overall functioning, its ease of assembly, the reduction of maintenance, efficient transportation, and its simplicity and durability. This will include the flexibility to permit ongoing and later changes. The city would function as an evolving, integrated organism rather than a static structure. This systems approach envisions assembling entire cities by standardizing basic structural elements, which are prefabricated in automated plants and assembled on site. Many of these buildings would be comprised of standard units that can be arranged to meet many different requirements. This approach means that these cities can be extremely cost efficient because only one sector needs to be designed, which can be duplicated repeatedly for the completion of an entire city. Our approach makes it possible to sell or license these building methods and designs as totally integrated city systems anywhere in the world. The outer perimeter will be part of the recreational area with golf courses, hiking and biking trails, and opportunities for water sports. Inside this area, a waterway surrounds an agricultural belt with indoor and outdoor agriculture. Continuing toward the city center, 8 green sectors provide clean, renewable resources of energy using wind, solar, and heat concentrators. Waste recycling and other services are located beneath the city. The plan utilizes the best of clean technology in harmony with the surrounding environment. The residential district features beautiful landscaping with lakes and winding streams, a wide range of creative, innovative apartment buildings, and individual unique homes will provide many options for the occupants. New and innovative methods of fast mass construction for housing and building systems will inject composite materials into a mold and then extrude the form upward. In some cases, multiple city apartments can be produced as continuous extrusions, which are then separated into individual units. Cranes transport these prefabricated dwellings to site locations. They are then lifted and inserted into a support structure. The apartments are lightweight and high strength. All of the dwellings are designed as self-contained residences. The outer surface of these efficient structures serve as photovoltaic generators, converting solar radiation directly into electricity for heating, cooling, and other needs. The thermocouple effect will also be used for generating electricity. The wide range of individual homes are prefabricated and relatively maintenance-free, fire-resistant, and impervious to weather. With this type of construction, there'll be little or no damage from floods, earthquakes, or hurricanes. Their thin shell construction can be mass-produced efficiently and economically. New energy-efficient systems can be installed to supply enough power to operate the entire household. Adjacent to the residential district are planning, science, and research centers. 8 domes surrounding the central dome house art, music, exhibition, entertainment, and conference centers. Lovely parks, lakes, streams, and waterfalls are located throughout the entire city. The Central Dome, or Theme Center, contains schools, healthcare, shopping, communications networking, and childcare. It is also the core for most transportation services, which move people by transveyors horizontally, vertically, and radially anywhere in the city. This minimizes the need for automobile transportation, except for emergency vehicles. Transportation between cities would be by monorail. The Central Dome will eventually house a cybernated complex, which serves as the brain and nervous system of the entire city. It projects a 3D virtual image of Earth using satellite communication systems which display information on weather, agriculture, transportation, and the operation of the whole city. This cybernated system will use environmental sensors to help maintain a balanced load economy, which avoids overruns and shortages. For example, in the agricultural belt, electronic probes monitor and maintain the soil conditions, water table, nutrients, and more. This method of electronic feedback can be applied to the entire city complex. With computers now able to process trillions of bits of information per second, they are vital for arriving at correct decisions for the management of these innovative cities. Some of the cities may be total enclosure systems, which are self-sufficient. These massive structures would contain residences, parks, recreation, entertainment, healthcare, educational facilities, and more. Everything built in these cities would be as near to a self-contained system as conditions allow. In these total enclosure arrangements, the skyscraper assures that more land is available for parks and wilderness preserves, while at the same time eliminating urban sprawl. Wherever possible, geothermal energy can be harnessed. Geothermal power offers the possibility of an abundant source of clean energy. This source alone could provide enough energy for the next 1,000 years. National transportation systems would include a network of waterways and canals. These bodies of water could minimize the threat of floods and droughts by diverting floodwaters to storage basins. In addition, these canals could supply water for irrigation, fish farms, and recreation. The canals can also be used for desalination using a method of evaporative condensation. A network of tunnels could facilitate transportation of passengers and freight across the Sahara Desert to all the Arab nations, free of the effects of sandstorms. These tunnels will be located 30 to 40 feet below the desert surface, with ventilators every 1,000 feet. Water could be pumped from below the surface of the Sahara and transported to all the Arab nations. In some instances, ships could serve as floating automated plants, capable of processing raw materials into finished products while en route to their destinations. Huge ships and submarines, with many removable and interchangeable compartments, will carry freight across the oceans. Rather than separate containers, an entire freight section can be automatically disengaged at the port. Bridge designs would be greatly simplified, and bridges can be made corrosion resistant. They would be prefabricated and transported to the site by twin-hulled catamarans. On some bridges, trains could be suspended beneath traffic lanes. Colonization of the oceans is one of the last frontiers remaining on Earth. Prodigious oceanic city communities will evolve as artificial islands, floating structures, undersea observatories, and more. These large marine structures are designed to explore the relatively untapped riches of the oceans and provide improved mariculture, freshwater production, energy, and mining. This could offset land-based shortages. They could also provide almost unlimited riches in pharmaceuticals, chemicals, fertilizers, minerals, oil, and natural gas. Ocean cities would be resistant to earthquakes and greatly relieve land-based population pressures. The population would vary from several hundred to many thousand. Underwater oceanic viewing and research facilities provide expansive panoramic observations of the undersea world in its natural habitat without disturbing the ocean environment. Unsinkable floating sea domes will attract those who prefer unique offshore or island living. In the event of inclement weather, they could easily be towed ashore, mounted and anchored to elevated support structures. Mariculture and sea farming systems are used to cultivate and raise fish and other forms of marine life to help meet nutritional needs. These marine enclosures are designed as non-contaminating integral parts of the ocean environment. A true World's Fair of the future will emphasize the contributions made by all nations toward advancing humanity. Although this fair will provide entertainment, its main function is to deepen understanding of the world we live in and the people who inhabit it. The architectural structures themselves will be jewels of future possibilities, with a wide variety of exhibition buildings. Many of the displays will depict not what the future will be, but what it can be, if we use science and technology with human and environmental concerns. It could be a vivid future showcase of the human potential. Videos, three-dimensional displays, and full-size dioramas will depict the fabulous advantages for all nations when working together to preserve the greatest gift we have, the resources and beauty of our planet Earth. In the final analysis, we are one people and share one planet. If you desire more information on any of the systems seen in this video, visit our website at www.TheVenusProject.com.
For those who are new to this, I just wanted to mention that all the designs that you saw in that video were done by Jacques Fresco. But unlike the film you just saw, we live in a world where our social systems are old. The way we acquire goods and services, is outdated. Our cities are detrimental to our health, chaotic, and a tremendous waste of energy and resources. And our politicians do not provide a way out of these problems. In other words, they don't serve us. But our technology is racing forward. We're trying to adjust to the rapid advances in technology with obsolete values that no longer work in our technological age. What is needed is a change in our sense of direction and purpose, an alternative vision for a sustainable new world civilization, unlike anything that's gone in the past. And this is what we are presenting here, and we call it the Venus Project. And the activist arm, organized by Peter Joseph, is called the Zeitgeist Movement. When I refer to sustainability, I'm not referring to sustainability for the banks that keep us in perpetual debt, the corporations, or the obsolete, scarcity-oriented social system that we all live under. By sustainability, I mean the well-being of all people in a new system that would bring them to their highest potential while protecting and preserving the environment. What I'm talking about is intelligently managing Earth's resources by using the methods of science to organize and manage society. I'm not referring to scientists running things, but the methods of science applied to the way we live to achieve a more humane society for everyone. We apply the scientific method in limited areas when it comes to such things as surgery, or the building of aircraft, or skyscrapers, bridges, and automobiles. Over the centuries, we've developed a consensus that when it comes to matters of personal safety, we choose science and technology rather than primitive belief systems or politics, because science has been proven to work. Then why don't we use scientific scales of performance when it comes to planning our society, our cities, our transportation systems, agriculture, healthcare, and so on, as an integrated global systems approach? This is really what's needed. If science has a lot to do with what works, then clearly there's much about today's social and economic system that is not scientific, because things aren't working very well for the majority of the world's population or the environment. If they were, war, poverty, hunger, homelessness, and pollution, they would have been solved long ago. Unfortunately, our social structures evolved with no overall global planning or an understanding of just what shapes our behavior and our values. And these things aren't being considered today. The Venus Project, on the other hand, wants to apply the intelligent management of Earth's resources for the benefit of everybody. If we continue using arbitrary opinions, old mythology, and politics, and we fail to apply the scientific method to the way we live, you can be assured that unnecessary human suffering and environmental degradation will continue, no matter how many laws we pass. We have the technological ability and the resources to feed, house, clothe, educate, and supply quality health care to everyone on the planet. But our practice of rationing resources through the use of money has never allowed us to do this, and it never will. Then how do we even begin to solve our problems by using the methods of the monetary system that we all live under? The use of money is hardly ever examined, but let's consider it, along with how much it influences our behavior and our values. Money itself doesn't have any value at all. There's no gold, silver, or anything to back it up. It's just a picture on a cheap piece of paper with an agreement amongst people as to what it will buy. If it rained $100 bills right now, people would buy whatever they wanted to buy, and most likely not go to work tomorrow morning. Everybody would be happy except the bankers. So let's look at money. Money is just an interference factor between what you want and what you're able to get. People think in terms of wanting a job to get the money to get their needs. But if they really thought about it, it's not the money that they want or the job, but access to the necessities of life. The use of money results in social stratification and elitism. They say in America that all people are equal, but most people don't buy the kind of car they want or live in the kind of house they want. They buy what they can afford. Many cultures tell their people they are free. But if one really thinks about it, you're only as free as your purchasing power. Watch out for those countries who keep telling you you're free, because if you were really free, you wouldn't have to have anybody tell you that. How can somebody be free when they can't afford the best medical care or education for their children? Most people are slaves to jobs that they don't really like, only because they need the money. Many laws are enacted for the benefit of corporations that have the money, that can persuade government officials to make laws to serve their own self-interests. People say that the monetary system produces incentive. This may be true to a limited extent, but it also produces greed, corruption, war, poverty, and tremendous unnecessary human suffering. We really have to look at the entire picture. The monetary system is based on artificial scarcity. For example, food products are sometimes destroyed just to keep the prices up. There's an enormous waste of energy and resources as a result of frequent superficial design changes in order to create continuous markets. Our social system is based on the need to continuously buy. You and I in this system are only consumers. This is really evident in the fashion industry. You can be assured if the hemlines are down to your ankle one year, next year they'll be way up above your knees. One is continuously out of fashion and has to always buy. There's a tremendous environmental degradation due to the high costs of more appropriate waste disposal. In other words, the earth is being plundered for profit. The recent oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico is a good example of this. But one of the greatest waste of lives and resources is the military. How shameful that it's one of our largest industries, second to the banking industry. The armament industry makes their money out of arming all sides. They have no loyalty to anything or anybody other than the need to make money. It's little understood just how much our values and behavior is shaped by the monetary system. Our values are influenced by the media for the benefit of the establishment. In other words, for those who are in position of differential advantage. We call them the unholy three: the military, the corporations, and the banks. They determine the public agenda for their own narrow self-interest. And they do this by perpetuating the illusion that the values of society are generated by the ground up. They're really not. They do this with such empty words as freedom, democracy, and patriotism. Einstein once said that patriotism is a disease. What we have all over the world is managed news, for and by the establishment. They influence the books, the newspapers, the TV shows, the movies, the entertainment, the politicians, and our education, which in turn helps to shape our values and our behavior. In other words, we have an established society that works for a few, that influences our values and behavior to keep things as they are. But most important, when the bottom line of the corporations is profit, all decisions are made not for the benefit of people or the environment, but for the acquisition of wealth, property, and power. For instance, if your country really cared about you, they wouldn't outsource jobs for lower wages elsewhere. What if all the money in the world suddenly disappeared? As long as we had arable land, factories, technical personnel, and other resources existed, we could build anything we wanted to build or fulfill most of our needs. The Venus Project advocates that with today's ingenuity and technology, we could easily overcome scarcity, which is the cause of most of our problems, such as poverty, corruption, war, and most aberrant behavior. We could accomplish this through implementing a totally new social design, and we call it a resource-based economy. This is a very different concept than anything that's gone before. It has nothing in common with communism, socialism, capitalism, or fascism. To put it simply, a resource-based economy uses resources rather than money, and all people have free access to their needs without the use of money, credit, barter, taxation, or debt or servitude of any kind. In other words, all of the Earth's resources are held as the common heritage of all the Earth's people. The real wealth of any nation is not its money, but its resources and the people who work toward the elimination of scarcity for a more humane society for everyone. If this is still confusing to you, consider this. If a group of people were stranded on an island and they had gold and diamonds and silver, but the island had no arable land, no resources, no water, no fish, their wealth would be irrelevant to their survival. In other words, money is not what people need, but rather it's access to the necessities of life. In a resource-based economy, resources are used directly into society to enhance the lives of everyone. If we managed our resources wisely, we could easily produce the necessities of life and provide a very high standard of living for all the Earth's people. This may be hard to believe, but even the wealthiest of today would have a much higher standard of living in a resource-based economy. When science and technology is unleashed into society directly to help people without the restrictions of money, the marketplace, or patents, we would then begin to understand the real meaning of spirituality. In a resource-based economy, children would be taught to be problem solvers rather than the parasitic professions that we learn today within the monetary system. These are such fields as advertising, real estate, law, banking, politics, stockbrokers, sales, just to name a few. When all the Earth's resources are held and shared, there would be no need for the military. This savage profession could easily be surpassed in a resource-based economy. These people are trained merely to be killing machines. How wonderful it would be if they would be sent back to school and trained how to be problem solvers instead, and taught how to bridge the difference between nations without violence. When all the Earth's resources are managed and shared as the common heritage of all the world's people, the artificial barriers that separate people would no longer be necessary. They'd be totally irrelevant. Invasion of countries purely for resource theft would be a thing of the past. And that's really why we invade other countries. It's not to bring democracy and freedom, as they tell us in the United States, but really to get resources, cheap labor, and access to strategic locations. In a resource-based economy, instead of fighting one another over scarce resources, people would be working towards solving problems that are common to everyone, such as cancer, cystic fibrosis, heart disease, tsunamis, and earthquakes. Remember that almost every new concept was ridiculed, rejected, and laughed at when it was first introduced, especially by the experts of the times. All new ideas for social betterment, such as women's rights, black rights, and child labor, have always been met with great resistance. For instance, during the time of the Wright brothers, the distinguished scientists of the time were writing books explaining why man can't fly. But the Wright brothers didn't read their books and went right ahead and built the flying machine. When science is applied with human and environmental concern to the way we live, we could easily create abundance for all. We will eventually understand that most criminals that fill our jails are a result of the need to acquire money and property in an age of often contrived scarcity of this monetary system. Children will look back and wonder why we couldn't see the limitations of this terribly abusive system. Being civilized is an ongoing process. There are no utopias and no final frontiers. All things change, including social systems. And they're in a continuous process of social evolution. Those countries that try and freeze and keep things as they are, they will be surpassed. Thank you.
Why don't they say have a nice life? twice a weekend. These are the habits we acquire in our work. So when I say people talk at each other, it's because our language has been designed hundreds of years ago. And the language itself evolved in a very crude way. We think we talk to other people. We talk at them, and they shake their head. It goes into their head, it comes out in relation to their background. Now, other proof that there's no such thing as talent or gifted people, which they tell you. They also tell you that somebody invented the wheel, and that was the beginning of the technical age. Not true. When a tree fell over another tree, and you pulled the top one, the bottom would roll. No one ever sat down and said, I gotta make a wheel. You can't do that. The brain doesn't work that way. So I'm trying to tell you something that man, this includes me. Whatever I say about people, I'm not a part of that. Man cannot think or reason. I even have difficulty with that. So I'm going to point out how it occurs. If you were raised as a baby by the headhunters of the Amazon, you'd be a headhunter if you never saw me. And if I said to him, doesn't it bother you to have 5 shrunken heads? You said, yes. My brother has 20. Is he bad? No. He's normal to that culture. If you're brought up in Germany, they don't remember, they burnt all the books that might give you a different point of view. So in Germany, you go and say, Heil Hitler, Deutschland over alles, Germany above all. If you're brought up in Australia, how are you, mate? Your dialect, facial expressions, everything is picked up by your culture. Man cannot think or reason. And I spoke this way at Princeton University. And there was a fellow from the optics department said, I disagree with you. I think man can think and reason. So I said, give me one example of man thinking. He said, there are thousands of examples. I said, I can't do anything with that. Give me one example. He said, well, somebody had to think of a camera. There was a time when there was no camera. And somebody had to think of it. Well, let me tell you where the camera came from. Those of you that have been in the barn with a knot hole in it, you will see cows walking on the wall upside down. If there's a source of light coming into the knot, if the sun's out on the cows, you will see them walking upside down. 1,500 years ago in the Holy Land, if you had a little hole in one of your hovels that you lived in, you would see people walking upside down on the wall. And people paid 2 pieces of silver to see the upside down world. You didn't even know what was happening. And that's where the box came from. The box, the knot, or a little hole in the wall, or a little bit of light. He got mad at me and he said, the fellow that asked the question, he said, what about the movie camera? Got real mad. I said, well, it's going to take a little longer to describe. Nobody ever invented a movie camera. Here's where it came from. Listen carefully. The Chinese 1,500 years ago used to cut a doll out of paper about this size. And it looked something like this. It was called a dancing girl. And it was just a fixed, rigid object. But if you put a candle behind it, as the candle flickered, the girl appeared to dance. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you take a stick and put a candle behind it, as the candle flickers, the shadow of the stick will move. If you put 3 candles there, you have 3 dancing girls. And that was the beginning of motion pictures. But the Chinese developed paper, and they developed a pad in which they bind together. And they write the Chinese characters up and down. But in the corner of the paper, they made a little mark in Chinese on the 20 pages. So if you want to know what page a certain subject was on, you look at the symbol. If you happen to grab the pad and go, that little mark you made in the corner will jump all over the place. If you don't understand that, make a mark in the corner of a pad, lots of little marks, and flip it back. Those marks will move all over the place. A Chinese artist drew a bird with the wings of this, that, the other, and when you flip it back, the bird looked like it was flying. Then he did water, and he did a man walking. And another Chinese individual put that on a rotary wheel, so it looked like a paddle wheel. And if you turned it, you saw a bird flying, waves moving. Nobody ever sat down and invented moving it. It's little by little, so slight, you don't even know where it came from. And you look at the mind of a person, and you say, my, what a mind they have to make a movie projector. They don't make a movie projector. They tell you that Galileo invented the telescope. Another major piece of bullshit. Let me tell you where he got it from. When lightning hits sand, sometimes it fuses into obsidian. And if you pick up natural glass, which is made by lightning, if it's slightly curved, slightly, and not too polished, it makes the sand appear larger when you lift it up. And he took two of those and put them in a tube. That's where the telescope came. Somebody said to me, well, what about Tesla? Tesla made the wireless. There's nothing out there to give him such an idea as that. The best thing to say is, I don't know how he invented it. Let me tell you how he invented it. When you bought an electric wire years ago from an electric company, they used to put it in a bag and it's all tangled up. Later, they learned to wrap it around a cardboard tube when you bought wire. Now, sometimes a wire was broken, so they connected two terminals to the end of the wires and run a current through just to make sure it wasn't broken. Well, when you bought fine wire, they wrapped around a fine tube. And when you put the fine tube inside the large tube, that's the packaging guy. The guy that packaged it up. He didn't want to make two packages, so I put the fine wiring inside the large tube. And when you checked the wiring to see if it was broken, it induced the current in the fine tube without any connections. That's where Tesla got it. Now you look at the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers invented the flying machine. Another piece of bullshit. Not possible. Here's why. A Frenchman designed two wings. They were about 3 feet long on each side. Because there's no way to know how big to make wings if you want to try to fly. You can look at birds, and then you can put things on and jump off a hill, and you break your arms and your legs. A lot of people die trying to build a flying machine. But this Frenchman with the 3-foot wings jumped off the top of the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. There's no other way to know. That's why I say nobody, but nobody ever makes a mistake in their life. They don't know. The first guy that had nitric acid and glycerin was fooling around with that, and the building disappeared. So did the guy. And his cousin never fooled with that stuff. There is no way for man to know anything. That's what I mean by he cannot make a mistake. Kids jump off a high place. If they jump off a place that's too high, they hurt, and they don't do it again. So everybody has to go through a process. Then they tell you that language is a great thing. It was invented so people can communicate. It was never invented. Somebody banged his elbow once, said, oh, and he banged it in, oh, he ate something good, There is no other way. The notion that a man could sit down and say, I got to make language so I can communicate. All nonsense. 90% of your schools will be shut down in the future. They're run by horses' asses. They don't know how to teach. When you say to a child, that's wrong, there's no information in those words. Think about it. That's wrong. What does that say? Nothing. That means I'm sorry I got the pot. Nothing to do with shit. Bullshit means I can't accept what you're saying. There's nothing to do with the shit of a bull. Now you stop looking at language and try to understand the intent. And politicians, let me get to those points. Politicians don't know anything. Ask a politician. Ask a politician, any politician, how do you stop cars from hitting each other? I don't know. How can you grow food without exhausting the soil? I don't know. How can you build structures that don't collapse in an earthquake? I don't know. They don't really know anything because they're not technical. Everything that you've got today, your electric light, your washing machine, your banjo, every instrument of lighting, every instrument of sound is all technical. And some people say to me, there's too much technology in the world today. And I say to them, I'm coming to pick up your radio, your television set. Oh, you're not. They don't even know what they've got. If you turned off all the dams, you can do it. All the refrigerated food would spoil between New York and San Francisco. It's technology that keeps us alive. And politicians are the least apt to be able to handle those questions. So I'm saying this is true all over the world. There are no good nations, no bad nations. No good people or bad people. You're told that some people are good, some are bad, some are lazy, some are hardworking, all bullshit. Let me tell you about people and good people and bad people. In ancient Rome, they believed in many different gods. And then this guy comes to town and says, I'm a Christian. I believe in one God. Well, he upset that whole economy. So they decided to take Christians and feed them to lions. Well, they would starve the lions for a week to put on a good show. And they'd take the clothes off the Christians, put a lot of Christians in an arena and release the lions. The whole family used to come Saturday and Sunday to see Christians being fed to lions. And the kids would say, Daddy, can I come next week to see Christians fed to lions? If you behave yourself. No. Was the dad nuts? No. That was normal to that culture. If you're brought up in the South, uneducated region, and you're not a member of the Klan, they boycott your store. If you're a member of the Ku Klux Klan, you're in. You're in. And here's the way you talk. I'm going to give you a nigger and I'm going to kick his ass. Is that guy speaking or what he picks up from the environment? Think about it. It's the environment that shapes behavior. Serial killers, murderers, robbers, ministers, priests, politicians, all shape our environment. If you don't understand me, you go way back in time and you'll find that people reflect their culture. They say things like I said before, how are you, Mike? Same facial expression, same dialect. I'm going to give me a black man, I'm going to give me a goddamn chink and I'm going to kick his ass. All that's learned. Prejudice, bigotry, racism, all learned. And patriotism is learned. Now, if a Jew sees a swastika, he might spit. If a Nazi sees it, he might get a lump in his throat. What kind of sentimental differences? So, even femininity is learned. In other words, if a female speaks differently than a male, which they usually do, they use their hands a lot. Oh, no, I see a gorgeous hat. If you bring up a normal baby with six women, a normal boy, and he's not associating with boys, he will move just like a woman. His hands, facial expression. Oh, I wouldn't do that, but all that's picked up. If you bring up a woman by a male that honors his son, he takes her hunting, climbing trees, she walks around like that. I ran cowboy pictures for 10 little girls for 2 weeks, and the little girls would walk around like that. Do you understand what I mean when I say you reflect a culture? An Arab, for example, in the world of the Arabs anyway, there's great scarcity. So they talk a lot before they buy anything. They say, how much you want? The Arab says it was made by 3 blind men. It took them 10 years to make. And the Arab says, how much do you want? He says, well, for you, I make special price. That's what you speak in Arabic. Especially if an American woman walks into an Arab store. If you look like a nice American lady, for you, I make special price. She says, oh, I'll take 2. And when that guy comes to America, he goes to Sears, he looks the other way, he says, how much do you want for that car? As though he wasn't too interested. The clerk looks underneath, says, $8.95. I give you $2. Goddamn foreign. No such thing as a goddamn foreign. If you're brought up in a scarcity country, that's the way it is. Do you understand? So when you get mad at somebody, you don't understand where they're coming from. Now, if a man does something south and he speaks with a heavy southern accent, you say, stop speaking with a southern accent. You can't. It's normal to that culture. So, in Spain and other foreign countries, they have bulls running down the street and men try to avoid them. And that's normal to that culture. Say, these people are crazy. Bullfighters aren't crazy. That's normal to that culture. Most of you here have been brought up to enjoy a good fight between 2 men, punching the brains of the woman handle. That damages the cranial case, the nerves of the brain, and detaches it from membranes. And people suffer that have been boxed later on. So you all go in and see that's great, that's normal. Sometimes a female will hang from the bottom of the landing gear at an air show and pick up a handkerchief in the ground. We are conditioned to watch automobiles go around and around, doing anything, just going around and around in the track. I said, you should have been there. There was a pileup of 7 cars. They're all burst in the plane. There's something wrong with our culture. Our universities today are better equipped than ever. And the atom bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima was a piece of cake compared to the new hydrogen bombs today. They were 1,000 times more destructive. America has 300 submarines. Each one has more destructive power than all the wars in history. What are you going to accomplish with that? I'm trying to tell you how stupid nations are, how stupid politicians are, how stupid the Pentagon is. Do you know what the Pentagon did in England some years ago? In a paper called The Telegraph. The U.S. had headlines. U.S. intends to bomb 7 countries with nuclear weapons. Sneak attack. How many of you know this? On one hand, it's amazing. The headline in the Telegraph, you can write. Don't take my word for anything I say. Write to the Telegraph. You can get it. Now, why did they do that? That's because North Korea was wondering when they were going to attack, so they're working on nuclear weapons. So is all the other countries, because they're afraid of the U.S. Even if the Pentagon intended to bomb 7 different cities, nuclear sneak attack. Even if they intended, they should not release them. That'll make everybody working on safety devices on nuclear weapons. laptop is that kind of problem. You can look up almost anything you want to. Now, how many people here know of a metal called memory metals, shaped memory alloys? One hand, about 10 hands. There are metals today with a memory. If you take that metal and you wind it around a coil, around a shaft, and heat it to about 200 or 450 degrees to 550 degrees, and you take that wire that looks like a coil, and you pull it out, bend it, twist it, do anything you want, and heat it again, it goes back to the coil. So if you spell out Jesus Christ with a wire, straighten it out, put it on your desk, and use a heat lamp, just go like that, and it'll go back to Jesus Christ. You can build a power if you want to. So, the world you live in today is as full of shit as a Christmas turkey. Our language, our prisons, our police, our military are all crude. We are not civilized yet. As long as you have armies, navies, missiles in space, and war, and prison, and police, we are not civilized. No one is ever civilized because it's an ongoing process. No one can design utopia. If I design a city that worked very well, it's the best I know up to now, but next year I'll have new ideas, better ideas. So you can't design the best laptop. You can design the best laptop you're capable of designing today. But 2 to 3 years from now, it'll be smaller, lighter, faster, and say hello when you pick it up. Something. All things change. There's never been any condition that is frozen. The dinosaurs are gone, the continents float on magma, and they move in different positions. Nothing can be frozen. You can't design an ideal city. There's no such thing as utopia. People come over and they say, you're a utopian. No, that's all I believe you can design a final city. Obviously, I don't. I think I can only do a certain job with what I know up to now. But if I did design a city that worked well, it'd be a straitjacket for the kids of the future. They'll design their own city. If you make a statue of Fresco, put it there, that holds them back. Move on into the future. All things change. There are no final frontiers. Now sometimes, or many times, people come to our research center. I'm going to say things to me like, I'm a nature lover. They say, they're a nature lover. I said, really? They said, absolutely. I said, you mean you like earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, disease? All that's natural, isn't it? Earthquake. So how can you be a nature lover? You can like certain things about nature, other things you don't like about nature. Then there's another bullshit word. This is going to bother a lot of people. Love is a bullshit word. Try to prove it to you, okay? How many of you here like everything you've ever done in life? Raise your hand. One hand. You live with a replica of yourself. How long have you been together? Sometimes you like yourself, sometimes a little less, sometimes not at all. Sometimes you get married, you love your husband very much. Sometimes a little less. Sometimes how I get into this. So love is a fluctuating system. Think about it. Don't take my word for it. No more can you love yourself all the time than you love everybody else all the time. Okay? So that'll save you a lot of money on psychiatrists and psychologists. Another bullshit profession. The psychologists try to adjust you to this system. They have to be stupid. And if you go to a psychiatrist and you tell them, I hardly have enough money to get by, I earn minimum wage, my car needs a brake job, and my wife has asked me for a new dress, and if I don't get the car fixed, I can't get to work. He tells that to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist, if he was sane, he'd pull open the drawer and give him a bankroll full of money and say, what's your problem? If you have a monetary problem, how come the psychiatrist can't solve that? Because it doesn't pay. If you own a priesthood. When you open the Bible, he says, this is what Jesus meant, and he says, you're wrong. This is what he meant. The third verse says, you're both wrong. This is what he meant. The Bible is subject to interpretation. So it comes out, you have a Catholic, Seventh-day Adventist, the Baptist, because it's interpreted differently. The language we use today is subject to interpretation. All our language, except mathematics, chemistry, physics, structural engineering. When engineers talk to each other, the guy says, I think he meant the beam is that side. No engineer says, no, I think it's that side. No, you're both going this side. The language of engineering is not subject to interpretation. So if you draw 3 views to an automobile with all the specified details, send it to Japan, they turn out the same car. Not subject to interpretation. When another nation says, I want to borrow $70 million for you, he doesn't say, I think you mean $3 million or $4 million. Not subject to interpretation. Love, the word, I love you, I'm crazy about you, is bullshit word. They have no real meaning. So in the future, children will be raised differently. Now this is where the problems begin. What we do to our children. I'm not saying we're bad. We're never taught how to raise children. So when my little boy was about 4 years old, he said, Daddy, the wheel came off my little toy car. And I said, so it did. I threw it in the garbage. But I'm watching around the corner. The lower lip keeps going up. Yeah, so what's the matter? He said, you're throwing it away. I said, get your baby toys where the wheels don't come off. He said, well, maybe I can fix it. So I reached for it and gave it to him. And he's trying to get it together. He gets it together in less than 10 minutes. Then I picked up and said, this is wonderful. How did you do that? He said, I'm not happy with it. And then I said, but how did you do it? You see the hole in the wheel yet? You see the piece of iron sticking up? I pushed on it and it went together. That's when you reward a kid. You say, here, let mommy fix it. Let daddy fix it. If we do some blah. Do you understand? Now, if you understand what I'm saying, there are other things. My little girl, when she was 3 years old, she walked into my lap, and I put a wrench on the nut the wrong way. I went on the wrong way again. My little girl said, there's no way to do it then. And I put it on the wrong way again. I'll have to show you how. So, you give kids challenge, you challenge these kids. In other words, I used to read to my kids in bed at night about dinosaurs, things kids like. And then I said, when a big brontosaurus met the triceratops, I won. And I closed the book. My kid said, what happened? I said, look, if you learn to read, you can find out this. Give them a reason to want mathematics. Give them a reason to do so. Schools don't know how to do that. And when you give one student an F and another an A, failure, A, excellent, passing grade, you make jealousy and envy. That's where it comes from. It's not human nature. There is no such thing as human nature. If you have 2 kids, and you give one a gift, and the other, no, because he didn't do his homework, you're making jealousy. You're developing attitudes between the kids. And when the kid that you favor, if you have a young kid, 3 years old, you play with him, and the 7-year-old is standing there with a lower lip up, and you play with the baby. When the baby falls down the stairs, the 7-year-old has a grin on his face. Is he bad? There's no such thing as good or bad. We don't know how to raise human beings. So I and Roxanne will open a portion of this to questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. And I think this is where you have to line up to ask the questions. So please, young people, come on and attack me.
If you want to go longer, you have more time. You want to go longer?
You want me to go on?
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody falling asleep in the see a science fiction movie and they say, boy, that guy sure has an imagination that created the Martian. I'm going to tell you what creativity is. If you ask normal people, what is creativity? I don't know. It's just something that comes to people. They don't know. You ask a little boy or a little girl, how do you walk when they're 3 years old? I said, I used to crawl and then I got up and I walked. That isn't true. They don't know how they walk. They learn physiologically. Here's what that means. In order to walk, you have to take the weight off this leg and head it in that direction. Left. Then take the weight off this leg. Step. If you don't take the weight off, you can't walk. So I tried to make a robot when I was 17, and it just went clunk. And I didn't know. Years later, I had to, what is walking? How does one walk? Well, I guess I don't know. You know, when the government said to scientists, can you put a man on the moon? I said, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? We don't know what a man can stand. So they put him in a centrifuge and whirl him around, and he counts out at 10 gravities. So we know you can't take off super fast, because people will die. Now when you get him in a spaceship, if you hand a guy a glass of water, if he pulls the glass away fast, the water will stay there and form little bubbles all over. That's what they mean by I don't know. So you have to put water in the tube and squeeze it into the guy's mouth. Now if you brought a plate full of food, if you lower the plate suddenly, the food will remain, go all over the spaceship. That's what they mean by we don't know. So there's nothing wrong with saying I don't know, but people should have access to information. So when you give them opinions, that's dangerous. So access to information means like your laptop. You can ask it all kinds of questions. I don't know if you know this, but about 25 years ago or more, a laptop would require a building twice this size to get all that information in it. Today, everyone has a little laptop, and it's getting smarter and faster. Now, people say to me, John, I noticed in your articles on the future, you talk of machine government. Do you think the machine's going to take over? No, they'll never take over. I want to tell you that. No machine will ever take over. If you have a laptop, and there's 6 laptops around, and I smash it, 6 laptops, we're going to get you. If it isn't this week, next week, or the next one, we'll get you. They don't care. Laptops don't care. You can run your laptop Saturdays, Sundays, and give me a day off. They don't have feelings. People have feelings. So they say to me, if you want to make a government with machines, they have no feelings, I feel safer with people. It's people that pollute the air and the ocean and make war and use the rack and torture people. And our serial killers, those are people. A guy flies in a bomber and he presses a mechanism and it burns a whole village. People do that, not machines. Even guided missiles are guided by people. So it's people that fuck up. Understand that. What we have to do is find a new way of looking at life, a new way of thinking, a different way of educating our kids, so they understand how they relate to nature, how they relate to one another. If you take a black guy and you raise him in the Ku Klux Klan, the same values, they wouldn't accept him. And so, when I was a kid, I did the wrong thing. I said, why are you beating up the black boy? They said, he's a goddamn nigger. And they pointed, he says, you're a goddamn nigger brother from the north. They didn't hear that. Later on, I learned to say, when somebody said to me, what do you think of the Ku Klux Klan? I said, it's a great organization, but it doesn't go far enough. That gets the ear. What do you mean? If you attack, you lose it. You understand what I'm saying? So, in New York City, I said, what are the most backward people in the New York area? I asked a lot of people. They said the Arabs that live on Atlantic Avenue. I said, what makes you think they're backward? They still believe the earth is flat. So I figured, gee, if I'm trying to change the world, I'm going to see if I can change them. So I called the guy in charge always worked with a guy in charge. His name was Elbaz. The first thing he said to me, "You are Arab?" That's what he spoke, and with a face like that. "You are Arab?" I said, That means yes in Arabic. So he said, "From where, though, father, you born?" I said, "Lebanon." "Very good, come and saw me. Come and see." So I came to see him, and he said to me, "Do you believe the world is round?" I said, "Yes." Where he's coming from, that means that's ridiculous. So I said, "Boy, if I can't get to that guy, how am I going to turn people around?" So I gave him a balloon I brought, and I rubbed it with fur, and I put cornflakes in his hand and told him to hold his hand away from the balloon. I don't know if you know what happens if you rub a balloon with fur. All the cornflakes jump up to the balloon. That's kind of electricity. His jaw hit the pavement. He said, "World, he magnet?" I said, "Yeah." "Ah!" And he explained that to the other guy. 2.5 hours it took me to turn him around from the relief and light and all that long. So I then said, "Well, how do you know your system will work? It sounds good on paper." So I joined the Ku Klux Klan. I dissolved it in a month and a half, one of my 34 members. Then I joined the White Citizens Council. They hate foreigners, all foreigners. And I dissolved that in 1 month. So, we are smarter than other people. We can develop techniques for turning people around. Now, somebody once said, "Don't you believe in love?" I said, "What do you mean by love?" I don't know what they mean by love. Sometimes the guy says, "Well, I love you." Maybe he wants to get laid. There's nothing to do with it. You don't always know what a person means. A person says, "I believe in honesty, decency, and ethics." I say, "You mean you have no locks on your door, you feed the hungry, you follow the Bible?" He says, "No, not that." So I said, "Look, it says in the Bible, 'Thou shalt not kill.' It doesn't say you can kill Wednesdays and Thursdays. It says, 'Thou shalt not kill.' It also says, 'Love thine enemy. Judge not, lest you be judged.' And anybody who does jury duty is not a good Christian. It's a judging. You understand? You can't follow the Bible. God made the world, he made everybody, and then he said, "I guess I don't like it so much." So he said, "Noah, build yourself an ark, and I want you to take 2 kinds of every animal." If Noah did that, the ark would be a mile long. Who cleans the shit out of that? The Bible was such an awful tale, so low grade. Just how people can believe in this kind of God. Man makes God in his own image. Some jerk that gets angry creates floods and hurricanes. And if you don't follow the Bible, you burn eternally. That doesn't sound like an all-loving God, does it? It sounds like a psychic. Many people go to church and they bother God all the time. "I need a new car. My air conditioner isn't working. I want to send my kids to school." Always me. I read about a young girl, 16 or 17, said she was about to get on an airplane, and something strange came over her. And she didn't get on, and 150 people were killed in that plane crash. And she said, "Jesus saved me." And she was going to speak at the Hollywood Presbyterian Church. When she got done speaking, the whole church said, "Amen." And I walked up to the pulpit and I said, "He didn't want you, he wanted 150 people." I'll show you how simple and how fucked up people are. And now we'll open for questions.
don't mind, and we'll put it right in the center here. You can just leave it on the stand.
So if you'd like to create an orderly queue and questions.
Hi. Wow, that's loud. My name's Colin. I'm from London. Not actually, but I live there. I was hoping that we'd get to talk a little bit about your designs and how you think they might come to fruition. What sort of... I'm not exactly versed in how, or if you've developed any strategies in how these things might be developed, if they would be developed by corporations, or by social initiatives, or by collectives. I think they're beautiful, but I think it'd be really cool to know a little bit of insight into how they might be built.
He's asking about how the designs will come into fruition. You're talking about like the resource-based economy and the social designs, or you're talking about the technical designs, or everything?
Well, however you'd like to answer the question. I'm sure that they all play on one another.
Everybody heard that, but he's asking how the designs will come into fruition. It's really, Jacques and I have absolutely no power. We have no money. And people ask how and when this will come about. It's really not up to us. What needs to be done, it's an educational process now to introduce these new values to people. And it really depends on how much initiative you people take, how much you get the books and videos, read the Zeitgeist Movement website, join the movement, learn about this as the people in the membership are doing. They're reading the book list together and discussing books, and they're going out and they're lecturing themselves. They're making books, they're making songs, they're making videos, any way that they can to get this information out there. So it's, this system is on its way out. We can't make it go any faster. We call it biosocial pressures. The more that industry automates, the less people will have jobs. That means there won't be enough purchasing power. People will not have the purchasing power to keep the system going any longer. This is inevitable in order for corporations to compete with other corporations who are automating. So even if the Venus Project doesn't come about, the sheer weight of automation will crash the system. So there is no one else working on an alternative for the benefit of everyone, and that's what the Venus Project is about. So learn about it, talk about it, and talk to others about it. We are always trying to work on developing the city, but Jacques is not that much interested in doing products anymore. He started with products. He did prefabricated housing. He did prosthesis. He did medical devices, knee prosthesis, hip prosthesis, hundreds of medical devices. And he worked with drug addicts and alcoholics, but found for every one that he saved, the system produced 5,000 more. So he's saying, what is he fucking around with working on these things and trying to make money when it's the social system that has to be changed so everyone can benefit by new technologies. So that's what's really important right now.
Hi, I'm Jerry from Dorset. I have a question from somebody else, actually. It's a question from Dave in Bridport, one of the Zeitgeist Movement.com members. I really wanted to attend this weekend, but sorry to say that I can't make it, but I wondered if you wouldn't mind asking a question on my behalf. The question is, as much as education has a role to play within our movement, I feel that maybe we could lead more by example, i.e. in that, with the movement growing to the size that it now has, do you think, stroke feel, that it could be worth the members selling their houses, cars and items of worth, since we won't need them afterwards anyway? Pull that money and use it to buy an island / area of land, somewhere large enough and with the resources required to start the Venus Project on a level closer to what is envisaged. The point being that in time others would see this working and follow suit.
Wants to know if you think it's more worthwhile to the Zeitgeist members to sell their houses, get money, get an island, and build by example, live by example. Said they couldn't hear your answer.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and develop an island, get enough people together to sell their houses and do that, I will supply drawings and basic layout for the island. Good luck to you.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel. My question is pretty similar to the previous one. But basically, what do you see as a crossover point from where we are now to the start of the resource-based economy?
What's the starting point?
The starting point or crossover point. What do you see the crossover point being?
Where do you see the crossover point between where we are now and the resource-based economy?
Well, it seems that every nation in the world is having trouble. It seems that every nation in the world is having economic problems. And this is about the best time to inform people. I have no power, Roxanne has no power. If you leave here and do nothing, nothing will happen. So if you talk to other people about the Venus Project, let them know what it's about, what we hope to accomplish. And if enough people decide, yes, that's the way we want to go, we will surpass this system. If you do nothing, nothing will happen.
Right now, the movement is really at its early stages. And even if we built a city and we had people come and living in it, and they had the same values as people have today, it won't work. So our safety is in enough people understanding this direction so they can implement it.
Okay.
I've got two questions, so if you want to go to the back. One is for myself, and the other one is from a friend who couldn't be here. And I was explaining to him a couple of days ago in a coffee shop about the Venus Project and stuff. And he said, I like the idea of a resource-based economy, but people being, full of shit like they are, and how do we stop them fighting over other resources which would still be available, socially. You see it on like a Saturday night, drunken people it's like, look at my girlfriend, all this kind of stuff. How do you stop all that kind of violence? I know there's a lot of miseducation and stuff, but...
How do you stop violence?
Yeah, how do you stop that kind of, just on a basic level? I know education and stuff is probably the obvious answer,
How
but...
do you stop violence? Can you have the mic?
Yeah.
How do you stop violence?
You live in a world that's already violent. You don't stop it. You have to educate people out of it. And obviously the prisons don't know how to do that. When you put a man in prison, if he steals a watch worth $150, if it's his third or fourth offense, he might be put in prison for 7 years. Figure out what that costs. It's cheaper to give him a bunch of watches. Think about it. Okay. Next question. I can't.
The other question was for myself, as a design student, how did you learn your craft?
You're a design student? Is it design student? How do you learn your craft? Design, industrial design. How do you learn industrial design?
If it's industrial design you want, you go to industrial design school. If you you want to be a doctor, you go to a medical environment. If you want to be an engineer, you go to an engineering environment. That's what a school is. It's an environment that specializes.
Hi, my name is Justin. I'd just like to start with a little bit of bullshit. We all love you. We do that. And I was just wondering, could you run for president? Could you run for president?
I live about a week and a half, somebody said. Wouldn't work. Yeah, president, even if you're elected president, if you change things too rapidly, no matter what philosophy you have, someone will hate you for it. Do you understand that? The electric car threatened the gas companies. And there's not a thing you can do that a group of people won't hate you for it. Do you understand that? That's part of the responsibility you accept.
Could you not run in the elections not to be the president, but just to see the measure of support you have? Would that be a good idea?
After we get through with the world cruise, we're on a world tour now, and we're informing people all over the world. We're about halfway through. When I get through with the entire group information system, I will let you know. I don't know.
Hi, my name's Kyle. My question is sort of about marriage and that sort of social structure we have at the minute. One male, one female, with like maybe 2 or 3 children being the average within the UK, I'd say. And I'm just sort of wondering what your opinions are around that going forwards in the future and any sort of thoughts around that.
For marriage in the future?
Well, just in terms of like changing our social structure currently, how we see things today, and it's one, even though you've gone in for love, it's sort of part of that.
You want to do that? About marriage in the future within the resource-based economy.
There's a man that wears a white collar. He says, I now pronounce you man and wife. Who is he? If you love somebody, no one can split you up if you really like them. And you live together as long as you love each other. When that diminishes, in other words, if Roxanne fell in love with an older guy than me, or a younger guy than me, I will feel a loss, but I'll help her back, because I'm concerned about her choices. When you grab your wife and you say, now you're my wife, you're lousing up my life, yeah, I want you to stay here, that's force. If a person doesn't want to be with you and you love them, help them back. Help them attain what they want to attain. That's love.
We think also, if we were able to get the resource-based economy going, we think there would be a high rate of divorce, because most people who are married today and continue to live together, not because they get along, but because their marriage is of convenience. They don't have enough money to leave, get another apartment, support the kids and wife, you know what I mean? So it won't be because of the Venus Project, but it'll be because of the conditions free them to do that. We feel in the future, you can't help it. You'll love as many people who are lovable. There probably won't be the restrictions of having to go and get married, because that's a social custom today. But as long as you get along with somebody, they're extensional to you, then you'll live with them. And when you don't get along, you don't have to go to a lawyer who says, okay, there's another $5,000 or $20,000, so he tells you that you can leave.
What happens to love when you're divorced? Sometimes the girl says, I want the house, the car, and the kids. Where does love go? How can it be love? Don't you see? People don't know how to talk about it. Love, they're trying to talk about something, but they don't know what it is. I'm going to try to tell you what love is in the future. Being extensional. Your hands are extensional devices. You can pick up an object, turn it around, look at it. When you meet someone and you enhance their lives, by whatever you share with them, the more you enhance, the greater the extensionality. Roxanne is so extensional to me, I can't walk out. Do you understand? We share so many things in common. And I'm not talking about words like I love you, you're beautiful, when you smile I like your dimple. Nobody ever says that to me. No guy. I love your wrinkles and your bald head. I never get that. So love in the future will be extensional, meaning people that add to your life, color, sharing experiences, sharing life, not because you're supposed to, because you want to. That's what I don't like about the Bible. When I help an old lady across the street, I do it because I have compassion and feeling for the person. But the Bible says, do something nice. Guy says, how am I doing? You know, I don't care for that. I don't care for a person that acts because it's godly. I want them to do it because they feel for the other person.
Hello. My name's James. I'm very impressed and excited by your social critique and by your ideas. Particularly with regards to, the resource-based economy and the application of the scientific method in social organisation. What I wanted to know is, can we see the evidence, can we see the science that shows that we have the resources to implement your ideas on a global scale, leaving nobody behind? Can we see that evidence, please?
Can you see the evidence that we have the resources to implement a resource-based economy?
Some of the evidence, I'll try to give it to you. I will try. There are millions of cars parked every day, millions, for 8 hours outside of the workplace. Do you understand that? Okay. If you have a resource-based economy, you don't own anything. The cars are the best quality we can make. There's no cheap cars or old cars. It weighs as much as a new car. They're there for your use. So the cars don't sit in front of a building for 8 hours. A car doesn't need to rest. You know what I mean? So people come out and use it. There are sailboats for your use. They're always in use. You don't have freight trains and freight yards hoping business will be good next month and those freight trains will be used. If you use the resources we have today, we can supply human needs very easily. If you don't understand that, when war comes, we give people war tanks, bombing machines, we give them submarines, billions of dollars. Everybody has weapons. How come? Only when war comes. When there's no war, why don't we send kids to college because they don't have the money? The smarter the American kids are, the smarter the French kids are, kids all over the world, the richer the nation. Every uneducated person in the nation is a burden. So we educate everybody because it's a thing to do for the benefit of everybody. Do you understand that? Okay.
I just want to mention something with that too. This culture we have today is tremendously wasteful. We make things to wear out and break down. We call that planned obsolescence, just so we can continuously sell. So if we use our resources wisely, there's more than enough to go around.
Hello, very good to meet you. Clearly you're a very wise man, and it's brilliant to meet you eventually. I partly agree with you on one aspect, that the social environment affects the human mind, but I also think that the human mind affects the social environment, so it's more of a two-way process. The inner affects the outer, and the outer affects the inner. It's one whole process. And so the human species, which is obviously evolved, from previous species, has a certain structure in the mind, which obviously is deeply conditioned in beliefs and all those kind of things. Okay, just one more thing, as the steps that it would take to get to the resource-based economy from the monetary system. Obviously, it's going to have a certain implementation plan. And two things I would say. One is that I do feel we need a level of political, we need political leadership standards put in place to create greater wisdom, so people like Jacques, can, basically be leaders. And also we need wise education in schools in order to lead towards this resource-based economy. That's my view. I think you're a very wise man. Thank you.
Some people can't hear what I'm saying because language is subject to interpretation. When you talk of the inner mind, there is no inner mind. So a person doesn't know what they're talking about. There's no evidence of an inner mind. Now there's some people believe that the mind and brain are separate. The mind is ethereal to some people. But if you get a tumor in the occipital lobe, you go blind. So the brain and mind are part of the same. The brain is like a battery and with a charge. Now if the brain is brought up, you bring up a human being in a gray bowl without any stimulus, feed them and wipe their behind, they turn out to be idiots. Because you need stimulus. The brain cannot become active unless it receives stimulus. And if people don't understand what that means, there's a lot of books they have to read. One of the books is called Brain and Mind. You get home, if you really want to know these, don't come up with a question that you think has any meaning. It does not necessarily has meaning. Most of the words you use have no meaning. I'm sorry to say this. You can't, we have to permit the next guy on. Sorry.
People like Krishnamurti talk about the condition of the mind.
You have to have information about what you're talking about.
But I think there is.
When you say the brain is there, do you know that? Are you a brain physiologist? I'm sorry, sir. Next question.
Thought process.
Talking about Krishnamurti too, talking about the condition.
Krishnamurti never made one apple tree grow faster or better. He never added anything to the world, just words. Krishnamurti was a decent, a wonderful person, but had nothing to offer.
Both go together.
When the Pope comes to this country, he points to God. When he goes to China, he points a long way. China's on the other side of the world. When he goes to Brazil, he points sideways. He doesn't even know the earth is not flat. I can't deal with that.
I just wondered if you, how much knowledge you have of free energy machines, Dr. Stephen Greer with the Orion Project, Dr. Brian O'Leary, that type of technology.
I'm familiar with the free energy machines
When you say free energy, you mean a machine without an input?
I mean a machine that the output is greater than the input and continue virtual motion.
Okay. I've been to about several thousand free energy machines. All of them that I've witnessed have a magnetic rotator in the wall that turns an object outside. But you didn't know that. Do you know what I mean? So far, unless you're using the sun and you concentrate the heat and use that heat energy, the sun is the source. A sailboat cannot sail unless the wind is moving it. All things that we know of in the physical world are acted upon by resident forces. A leaf doesn't fall to the ground. A ball doesn't roll down the hill. Gravity moves it down. People still say today, I'll see you at sunrise. The sun doesn't rise. The earth rotates in that direction. Well, our language is so old it's hard to talk to people that have been brought up with that old language. I've tried to answer your question. In my experience, I've never seen any free energy machine yet.
I mean, like some of the leading edge physicists are talking about, you know, pulling out energy from the quantum vacuum and creating that into, you know, practical energy technology, that stuff. Okay.
Hi, John. I just want to know about resource allocation. You were saying that TheVenusProject is going to have computers who are going to allocate resources. And you say, well, how can machines take over? But, I mean, who programs the machines and who sets the parameters? And
how can who organizes the machine?
I don't know if you caught this, but I said in the old days, a pilot used to look out of an airplane and say, I'm about a mile high. With Doppler radar, goes down to the ground, comes back up, and says you're 5,300 feet, 10 inches off the ground. No human can do that. So it's not a machine takeover. The machines are being assigned different projects because they're more sensitive than humans. Now here's something you may or may not know. About 9 years ago, machines were able to handle 1,000 trillion bits of information per second. No human comes anywhere near that. So when I say the machines will eventually monitor industry, growth of plants, because man can't do it. It's not a machine takeover. Do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I understand, yeah, but in terms of like, who would have a say in who gets allocated what resource?
Who allocates who gets what resource?
Okay. We have to work toward production of an abundance. That's the direction we work toward and make it available to people.
But I mean, on a global scale, there's
On a global scale,
say
yeah.
a finite number of resources available for the whole world.
Just a minute.
Can you hear that?
Yes. You think there's finite resources. Okay. You understand there are floods all over the country, all over the world. They don't harness the floodwaters. We would direct the floodwaters to storage stations. I don't believe.
I mean, in terms of food.
In terms of food?
And harvest, like, if we're having a global,
Yes.
a global thing,
Yeah.
and say there was like some kind of storm damage that you couldn't predict, and
Well,
all the world's resources were wiped out.
According to people that I know that are into agronomy, they say we can use the salt water of the oceans to grow food. Just certain things you haven't heard about. There's more than enough by far, so far. But if the population keeps exploding, there will come a time when there is no return. So when you get to the point of no return, I hope we don't reach that. So what we do is find out what the carrying capacity of the Earth's resources are. And we then say the Earth can support 3 billion people well. And if you exceed that, you're going to have territorial disputes, killings, you understand? If you do a survey first, find out how much arable land there is in a given area, how much water, that determines how big your city should be, not Fresco. The resources determine, or the carrying capacity of the environment determines how many people. For example, if we do a survey, and there's so many cases of heart disease, so many cases of brain disorders, that tells us how many hospitals built. Fresco does not decide how many hospitals or anything else. Survey committee tells us what the conditions are.
Yeah, the society would determine the allocation of supply.
Not society, not society. Survey committee. Society is not equipped to do that.
Well, I mean, you said before about monetary system and how it doesn't really work, but I think it's the abuse of the monetary system will work. And in terms of like, it's basically just the amount of value we as society put on certain products or certain thing in the world, certain resource. And if a computer was to assign value, basically the global value system of all the resources in terms of, you mentioned the Arabs bartering.
I was talking about how can you attribute value to allocation of resources?
There's a book called Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase. I suggest that you read it. The Tyranny of Words, or Language and Thought and Action by Hayakawa. or Science and Sanity by Alfred Korzybski. The language that you use does not correspond to my background. All I can say is I don't believe you understand in detail enough about social systems to know how they work.
Well, on a global scale, I mean, you say that you kind of survey the whole resource and say, well, it could sustain...
So far, there are many books on your laptop. You can get a global survey of the Earth's resources.
But I mean, what would you do with the limits of the Earth population?
There aren't any yet.
So, if you had to calculate, but the population is kept growing, I mean...
In times of war...
The population wouldn't just keep growing.
Well,
that
if
would
there's
happen.
no war and there's, you know, the diseases were...
That's your projection into what would happen. You're just projecting your limitations. There would not be an overpopulation if we had a resource-based economy. Statistically, people who are better educated, even today, have less children. We would teach people the meaning of the carrying capacity of the earth and what it means if they overpopulate. People would have so many options in the future, I don't think they would want to just raise a family. You know, even today, that's what women are given as an option. Most women want children and a family and somebody who can support them. You know, and more women are going to work and being independent, but it's still like that. They have a lot of pressures traditionally to have a family. So I think there'll be a lot of options in the future where people will decide to do different things. But you'd have to learn more about the system.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question going back to the opening sort of video that we saw earlier in the design, specifically this circular city system. Now I noticed some of the inhabitants, place where people lived, it looks sort of similar to sort of a Beverly Hills type accommodation, where it's quite extravagant. You've got the water as well there. But there was also some sort of tower block design. And I want to know, tower block? Also, apartment blocks, that sort of thing. I want to know the difference if there's no income coming in and variance between what people can afford, who would decide where people would live.
We wouldn't decide. You would decide.
But if there's one that's so clearly more extravagant, people would probably prefer that to another. Why would there be the two
There
different
wouldn't be
types?
things that are more extravagant. If you had kids and five kids and a wife, you would need more space. Somebody who didn't have that wouldn't probably want that amount of space. People would probably be moving around and doing more things too. They wouldn't be living in one home. There is nothing that has conspicuous waste or that's extravagant.
You don't own anything in the future. All things are there for your use. You don't want to own the earth. You only live so long. When you die, somebody else has it. So there's no ownership in the future. You have access to anything you want. If you don't understand that, I'll conclude with a library. A library, you don't have to own all the books. You can go there and check out a book. When you're through, leave it there, or give it to somebody else so they can check it out. We have next door to the library, we have a camera center, where anybody in the community can check out a camera. The next door we have musical instruments, where anybody in the community can check out a drum, saxophone, violin. If people have access to the necessities of life, they do not steal. I know that's very hard to understand, but if you live near a waterfall with good drinking water, nobody comes at night and fills the canteen and goes home. You know, it's only when there's scarcity or threat of scarcity that you get aberrant behavior. Nothing is self-activating.
Hello, Jean. Roxanne, enjoyed the company last night, gotta be honest. Eye-opening. I did warn you last night that I'd be coming forward today with a few positive criticisms. And these criticisms amount to how the zeitgeist movement goes forward in the future and how it sustains itself for the future. I would hate, after being an advocate for the resource-based economy for over 30 years, I would hate to see the zeitgeist movement go down. I would really hate that. And
how does the Zeitgeist movement sustain itself in the future? You'd hate to see it.
right. The problems that I see are threefold. First of all, there is no registered membership within the Zeitgeist movement. All you click on the, let me finish, Jack, let me finish, please. Right?
I think if you have
Roxanne.
about, we can't answer those questions. If you have criticisms about or constructive analysis about the Zeitgeist movement, I would suggest you take it up with Peter Joseph. Peter Joseph has started the Zeitgeist movement as the activist arm of the Venus Project. And it was Peter, we discussed where the website would go, but it was Peter who's taken that initiative to start the website and to start the activities for the Zeitgeist movement. If you have constructive criticism for the Zeitgeist movement as the activist arm of the Venus Project, because we really don't have time to work on the Zeitgeist movement website or their activities. We have suggestions, we see Peter a lot, but it's Peter who has taken that on. So we really can't answer that.
Right. So in other words, I'm speaking with all people.
You should speak with Peter if you have ideas about what he wants to present in the Venus, in the Zeitgeist movement website.
That would directly be, you know, I would most certainly take it up with people.
Yeah, I would.
How you going, mate? Yeah, it's really. Alright, so, from what I can tell, you've got two basic strategies to implement this change to a resource-based economy. The first is through re-education, so that children are raised to see themselves as their full ecological selves, as opposed to just consumers. And the second is through the implementation of these new cities, you know, really sustainable, beautiful-looking environments to live in. They look amazing. My concern is that to actually build these cities, it's going to take a massive amount of energy to build the machines that will put together the cities, to build the cities themselves, to move everybody over into these cities. A massive amount of energy will need to be put in.
It's going to take a lot of energy to build the cities, to build the machines for the cities, and put the
well, my concern is that the only way, even if it doesn't take that much, you know, the energy that it will take, the only way that we can really provide that at the moment is through coal or carbon-emitting sources.
The only way we can provide that is through oil or carbon.
Emitting sources.
Carbon-emitting sources.
And so we need to,
oil or coal.
It would take a massive investment of you know, energy to create this. And it's exactly the time that we need to be pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and stopping this.
It's the only way you can build your cities through coal and oil.
Okay. Coal and oil. Do you know what volcanic energy is?
I do.
Do you know Iceland grows bananas all year round?
I do.
And oranges? And that the Earth's heat is constant for hundreds of thousands of years? Just geothermal energy alone can supply for all the world's needs. I'm not talking about solar power, but if you make heat concentrators, that too can supply for all the world's needs. If you use wave power, tidal power, thermal power, tidal power, there's more than enough energy available.
Absolutely is. I completely agree that there's more than enough energy to do this, but we need to build the plants, the power plants that will extract this energy.
Okay.
We need to, you know...
What's your question? Can we build power plants?
Can we build enough renewable energy sources using the renewable energy that we already have?
Well, let me ask you this question. How come when war comes, we build everything for destruction?
It is very interesting, and I feel like the government's trying to pull everyone together in a warlike movement right now.
There's no problem if the world agrees with the direction of the Venus Project. If they agree, we can accomplish things in 3 to 6 months. Not built the way it's done today.
For people to come to the point of agreement and a massive changing of
Okay.
education.
You mean, how do you get people to come to an agreement
How do
fast?
you do it fast enough?
Okay. Here's how you do it. Motion pictures. We want to make a motion picture called And the World Will Be One. That motion picture can get to millions of people in 2 months. My lectures will not, because I can only talk to maybe 200 or 300 people. With motion pictures, it travels all over the world. Right now, we're working on the script of a motion picture that shows how we get from here to there, in spite of the differences.
It seems to me that one of the biggest things that we'd have to change in the first place is people's minds, rather than just changing buildings and that. If we were going to spread out the message to other people for them to understand the Venus Project, what advice would you give that would help us to overcome people's fear of change?
Well, we would say the first thing to help people understand this direction is to learn about it as much as you can. There's a lot of videos on the website. We have books and videos that help support the project also, because we get no outside funding. We've done all this ourselves. And there's over 70 pages of questions and answers. So the first thing you have to do is learn about it yourself so you can help answer questions that other people have. So they will understand it on their level, really. Yeah, mostly. If you want to help change people, learn about it first so you can meet them where they're at and then talk to them.
Hi. The way I understand it, for the jobs later, when this is all underway, then a lot of like the monotonous jobs and like construction things will be taken over by machines. So there aren't going to be as many jobs as there are now. So I was wondering who would decide first and how they decide who actually works and who never works.
How do you decide who works and who doesn't work if you don't need as many jobs in the future?
If you live on fish and you live in Mexico, what you take out on the boat is what you know about. You don't decide who lives where. They do. People decide whether they want to live in our cities or outside our cities. They make their own decisions. We don't decide anything concerning individual preference. They decide.
That's not the question. The question was who decides who works and who doesn't.
The state of machine technology. You know what that means? How far along you are. The automobile companies used to employ 3,000 people. Now there are 30 people. So the machines are coming in and they're taking over the jobs. Is that good or bad? It's bad for the people that are downsized. It's good for the people that get higher wages, higher place. But we don't do that. When a new machine comes in, I want you to know how the Venus Project works. When a new machine comes in, we call the help together. And we say you used to work 8 hours a day, now you work 4 hours a day. Instead of having a 1-week vacation, you have a 3-month vacation. So as the machines come in, we free people from boring jobs. Do you understand? So it's our aim to reduce all boring jobs. Like I don't like a young girl standing behind a department store counter selling hair lotion or lipstick. That's not using her brain, right? That's using a little bit of the person. So the people of the future will be educated to become problem solvers. Heart disease, all the problems. Hurricanes, whatever bothers people, that's what we work on. There are no parasitic professions, such as lawyers, salespeople, advertising, gone.
Hi there, Colin again. Thanks for asking that question. I came up here with a question, but then stimulated by the gentleman in the blue shirt just before her, I have a new one. I've noticed throughout this presentation that there's been a lot of attention paid to education and to the way people think and understand humans' roles in the world in relation to what we consume and what we put in relative to what we take out. But then there's also a lot of talk about what we use, where we live, how that applies to the way we work, the cities, for example, the energy we use, the designs, which is another part of this whole we're looking at. Questions coming.
You hold the mic right up to your mouth.
Yeah, so, yeah, my question is, where's the disjunct? How important is education? The reason I ask this is very much like you, I believe that people are not intensely rational. In fact, they're much more products of their environment. They respond to what they're doing and what they're around and what they have.
Can you ask your question?
The question is, how important is education? Why don't we just build the cities and start working with them instead, and then people work?
Education. Why don't we just start building the cities?
If you have a lot of uneducated people and you put them in cities, you'll have the same problems you have today. You can't move into the new city any more than you can get in an airplane and fly at it. First they put you in the dummy airplane, you move the controls. Then you sit in a real airplane, they explain what the instruments are, how you check your tire pressure, how you make sure there's no water in the fuel. Without that kind of education, you can't earn a pilot's license. So, without education in medicine, you can't practice medicine. So in the future, we put you in an environment that gives you the information you need to function in that environment. You understand my language? Okay.
Hi. You're talking about how you'd like to see our children become problem solvers. Can you talk a bit more about what you'd like to see in the education system? Would it be like teaching them new values, and what would the structure be? Would it be like a curriculum or a classroom environment and that kind of thing?
Talk about the education, more curriculum, structure.
Are you interested in education of children or there are certain ages that have a certain range of behavior. Like I wanted to communicate with my little boy when he was in the crawling stage, before language. I put a bulb in the corner of his crib from an atomizer. I just squeeze and perfume comes out. I put a yellow bulb there. I knew that the kid would grab it because it's outstanding. When he grabbed it, lights went on in a circle. But he let go because he was so abused by the lights, he let go. And when he let go, the lights went out and he started to cry. It took about 3 days for him to understand squeezing that ball makes the lights go on the circle. Once that was established, that's called associative memory. I put another bulb at the other end of the crib, and he crawled up and squeezed it either way without having to go through all those stages. And he looked up and nothing happened. But on the wall, lights went on up and down. He learned that that ball controlled the lights on the wall, the other ball controlled the lights on the ceiling. After about several months, I had 6 of those things on one side. When he wet his pants and squeezed one, mother would come in and change the diapers. Before he could talk, do you understand? If you don't know how to communicate with children, my difficulty was snakes. I had great difficulty in trying to condition snakes. I didn't even know how to begin. But after about 1.5 years making what you would call normal mistakes, I put a glass partition in the snake's area and a white mouse on the other side. And the snake would center its head and go and hit the glass. After about 10 times I took the glass out, that white mouse could go anywhere, but a black mouse, the snake would strike for it. Do you understand that? It's called reinforcement. The snake got pain whenever it reached for the bone and never got it. The same with an animal. When it sees a porcupine, it doesn't know what it is. It gets closer and closer till it gets stuck. Then it stays away from the porcupine. But they in school say he learned. Doesn't learn. He got pain getting next to the porcupine. Do you understand? The words that people use today are not descriptive. And so I would just tell you that in children's upbringing, we find different ways of communicating other than language. And we use those methods. And the first thing we teach children is how to relate to the real world. We show them that if you put a seed in the ground, nothing happens. That plants cannot grow unless there's sunlight, moisture, gravity. You understand? The whole works. But in school they say plants grow. They can't grow unless there's sunlight, moisture, soil, temperature. You understand? If you took an orange tree and planted it in the polar regions, nothing would happen. It would die. So we teach kids how things relate. Then we have gadgets which we use. We block the sun. And we ask the kid, what's happening? He said, the plant leaf is beginning to wither. I said, take the blockage away. Oh, it's coming back again. Now stop the water. You say, well, I stop the water, the plant is withering again. You understand? We teach them a physical connection. Nothing is self-activating, is what I'm trying to tell you. Now, after that, I have all these kids hold hands and pray and block the sun. And they pray. And the plant begins to wither. And I say, form a larger circle and pray harder. And the plant is still withering. It says in the Bible, prayers are always answered. Bullshit.
A couple more things on kids and education. If you want kids to be cooperative, as we would want them to be cooperative, it's not, we don't give them moral lectures or reprimand them if they're not cooperative. We reinforce it in the culture. For instance, in order to make a little car that the kids like to do and like to drive in, it takes about 6 kids to pick the car up, and then it takes 2 other kids to put the wheels on. And you use that throughout the whole car, so they get reinforced by cooperating. You build it into the system, in other words. And you don't have kids stand in a row and exercise, because if you don't like to exercise, you poison yourself. So instead of that, you build it into the environment. For instance, we'd have a huge lake, and in the middle of the lake is a craft shop on the top of a big hill. And the kids love to go to this craft shop because they make whatever they want and they really enjoy it. So in order to get there, they have to get in a boat and row. Then they have to climb the hill, and they do it with vigor, and they feel good because they enjoy it and they like going to the craft shop. So you do things like that.
You build it into the community. You build it in order to get to the library, you climb a hill. The books are high, so you get to move your arms in different positions. We do not order kids to do exercise. We build it into the community. If you want details on it, I'll see you later. We can discuss it.
Hi, I've just got a couple of questions. The first question I'd just like to ask on someone else's behalf regarding open source software and hardware. With the internet, there's been a quite dramatic increase recently in open source software and hardware. So, to give you an example, Unix or Linux is open source. It means anyone can download it, develop it, and upload a new version and contribute. Hardware, for example, RepRap, which is a machine that can assemble small plastic components. Anyone can download the blueprints, create it, and etc. My question is, are the design details for the Venus Project infrastructure available under that? Are they open source? No. And if so, why? And if not, then why not?
I want to know why your design details for the cities are not open source. Do you want to do that?
Because every time I've released it, other people took patents on it. You understand? And then it wouldn't be released. So every time I put things out free, people copied it and took out patents on it. Do you understand that?
They changed it a little bit. That's been the history of an invention. And that's been the history of Jacques with his inventions. They've stole it, they've taken patents on it. If we do that, we won't be able to use it when we have the ability to do so.
What would be the consequences of doing it anyway? saying we no longer want to participate in the current society?
Because when we have the funding to be able to do a city and somebody owns the patent, we can't do it. Or we'd have to pay off somebody else in order to do his designs.
If we just say, no, sorry, we don't want to participate, we don't agree with your laws, we don't...
Well, unfortunately, today it's a little more difficult because they own the military, they own the jails, and they can do whatever they want. Even if there are laws, they do whatever they want to restrict certain things.
Another quick question or suggestion / question. You said that you don't have the resources right now to perhaps initiate the transition, and we all understand that. But I mean, there's a lot of people in this room, and together, like we quite clearly, well, there's a lot of people in this room. There's also tens of thousands of people signing up to the Zeitgeist movement, and I think once we've gathered more awareness and we've established that we share a new set of values, what do we do then? And what I'm thinking is perhaps, you know, we're going to have to get rid of property at some point, and we all have a lot of possessions that we don't use. Do you think it would be a good idea to have a global informational map of systems, autonomous systems, objects, in other words, that people could share as long as they could distribute them?
A question means, who makes the decision? What if I don't want to live in your cities? How do you make your buildings sustainable? Those are questions. If you want to make a statement, you can do that later. There are other people that have questions. I don't think it's fair to the other people.
Okay.
Would you mind stepping aside? And after the meeting, if you want to talk about
First of all, thanks to everyone for coming. I think it's a good opportunity to focus on what we agree on. And my question is, from your experience, how do you think the Zeitgeist movement is doing?
Well, considering that these concepts are so unique and so different in the way that people have been brought up and what they understand, that we think that the Zeitgeist movement has been amazing. That you can't really judge it that much by the numbers, but how quickly it's been growing. Jacques and I have been working in obscurity for over 35 years, and Jacques before that for even longer in this direction. And we got no recognition, no ability, no support from others. And within, just from one person, just meeting one person who did the movie Zeitgeist Addendum, within before 2 years, we're doing this world tour. Other people are helping with it. You know, there are memberships and chapters all over the world, so it's phenomenal to us.
Hello. Well, while we get there, and time, in this transition time, we have to use our limited resources to impulse movement. And I wonder, because you were talking before about helping the people one by one, and I always I'm thinking to myself about how to use that resources, because if it's better, I mean, maybe it sounds cruel, but it's better to feed 1,000 people or educate 2. What do you think about that? I know that it's not that like a solution, but...
Are you talking about whether we should go out and feed people now or educate people?
I mean, it's about making people live better. So
I think you're asking if we should go feed people or educate a couple of people in this direction.
Yes, well, what's the direction of the better?
We think we think that people should be charitable and doing what they can, but we don't feel that that's a solution, nor would it point out a direction for society to move towards. We'll have perpetual hunger, perpetual warfare, and the way we're going will probably either blow ourselves up or poison the earth. So if you just keep doing charitable work without educating people towards another direction, I don't see any way out of it.
Hi, thank you for both of you coming today to the southwest of England. I currently live and work in China, where unfortunately I don't think you have a a tour going there at the moment, but hopefully soon in the near future. My question is a little bit off the main topic, but I hope some of you are interested in the answers of both of you. Do you believe or think that there is a possibility that out there somewhere in this great universe that we're based in, that there is another beautiful world just like ours, just like this one up here, that has all amazing resources in it? And on the top of that, do you believe in extraterrestrial existence, reincarnation and past lives?
Well, we think there probably is intelligent life out there because they haven't come here.
Only through the writing of another person that passed on. I don't believe in reincarnation. I'd like to believe in that, so would everybody else, but there's no evidence to support it. So being ruthlessly honest, I've never found any evidence. The only evidence of stupidity is reincarnated. We go to war continuously. We never seem to learn.
Hello again. A question that comes to mind. How do you prevent this movement from becoming another conditioned and fragmented idea, separate from the totality? And then there's a need to control it and make sure that it goes with a standardised, uniform view. In my view, this Vulcan logic approach is brilliant, it has its place, but I think there's more to it than a Vulcan logic approach.
But other people have questions, so I think we can answer your question.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
If I understand it correctly. You're talking about the fragmentation of this system. Is that right? You're talking about how do you avoid fragmenting and the dangers of fragmenting this system. Well, there are people who look at what we're doing and have taken the word resource-based economy, which Jacques came up with from a lot of years of hard work, and they've taken that word and they've turned it into something else. We have no way of protecting that to show what the meaning of it is, really. There are people who are also trying to do a first city because they think that they want to go out and build something, and they took Jacques' designs, put it up on a website, said they were doing a Venus Project city. We asked them to take it down. We asked them to join us because we'd like to do this too. And their city was not what we were advocating. So we don't feel that it would be successful, and we can't endorse it. So there are fragments to this by people who are taking what we're doing and projecting something else into it. We can't avoid that. We can't help that. So that's why we ask people, that's why we put out as much information as we can. We ask them to get the books and videos to learn about it. Every week, Peter Joseph was answering questions. We have a whole lot of hours of archived questions, a lot of radio shows that we've done. So if you learn from the source, then there'll be less fragmentation towards this direction.
Hi Jacques, my name is Robert. I have actually two questions. One of the leading questions in my mind is, how do you imagine an education, that is obviously key to education on this case, on everything, how do you imagine an education for this radical change without wiping out all of everyone who already socialized on this way? Who will teach? Who can teach to the new generation with the new way of society when we all socialize in the same way, including yours? How you imagine this education system?
You're asking who will teach the educational system? Is that what you're saying? Who will teach?
Who will teach the generation who will be coming this clear mind, who can absorb this idea, what you're trying to
Who will teach to, he's saying to absorb this clear direction. Who will teach it, John?
When Edison invented the electric light, if he invented it, I don't know. But when he did, he had to explain what it is to others. The more people that knew about it, the better it was. Because when the gas light blew out, a whole family died. Toxic poisoning, inhaled gas. So he had to explain it. When Goddard, an American scientist, worked with rockets, he said talking about rockets in the scientific community was a no-no. They thought it was science fiction, you know. And so he couldn't even talk to people about rockets. So the job was for him to educate people into what rockets are about. And that's what we have to do. We can't look at ordinary humans and someday they'll realize that, which is good. No way. You have to talk to them. Jesus talked to people. Mohammed talked to people. And he swung them over that point of view. You have to talk to people, not hope that they'll come to realize that. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. Do you understand that? So
I still cannot see the way how you kill the materialism from the people mind at this point. Because when we have a new small born child, I can imagine you can teach in this way. But at this point I can't see how we can all clear out by materialism, or how is it?
He said, how do you eradicate materialism? You can understand if it's children that are learning it, but how do you do it with people who are have the values that they have?
you're against materialism, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
To a certain extent. Okay. You have to impart the thing that keeps you away from it to others. If you fail to do that, it means you have to learn how to communicate with people that think differently than you about it. It's your job to do that. I want to change the Klan. I can't change them with reason or logic. I can only change them in a way that I can change them. I don't have the time to go into all that detail, but I can only tell you this. My mother hated foreigners, blacks, Japanese, and she didn't want me to associate with them. I brought a Japanese kid home. My mother said, I don't want that kind around. My job is to get to my mother, right? So I said to her, I was swimming and he saved my life. She said, oh my God, I was so rude to him. I said, yes, you were. That's a lie. He never saved my life. But my mother said, please ask him to come back. I want to beg forgiveness. When he came back, my mother talked to him and said, you know, he's just like you and I said, he's a member of the yellow race. And she come back with, that's got nothing to do with it. I'm using her logic, you know. He's a member of the yellow race. Slanty eyed, you know. My mother's defending him now. A month later, she calls him son, because she really likes him. Then I told her, he never saved my life. She said, you little devil, I would have never opened the door either.
Thank you.
Hi. In the slides at the start, we were talking about in the slides at the start, after the short movie, speaking about resource-based economy, it said that people will be allocated the resources that they need. And when you were speaking, you said that people will be allocated the resources that they want. I understand that you further clarified later on that it's access to resources. And I understand that ideally the survey committee would decide what a person's needs for access to resources were or not. Well, my first question would be, who decides who needs what? You do, okay. If that's the case, well, I kind of assumed that somebody would decide what people needed, because people might want more than they need, and then if there's only a finite amount of allocation, what is to stop lending of access to resources within the resource-based economy?
First of all, people don't own anything. Everybody has access to what they need, so nobody would want extra things once they learn about it. They can't use it to show off, to have an elite status. There's no need for it. If it rained gold today, You'd put it in your closet, you'd put it in your basement, in your cellar, but if it continued to rain gold for months and months and months, you'd be sweeping it out. You don't need it. So if you can go outside and use a bike and drop it off where you want and have another bike and drive back when you want, you don't want to store the bike in your house when there are bikes that are very top quality out there and other people or automation systems keep it in key shape because they're the best quality, they don't wear out and break down. So people really wouldn't want to store them. There's no need. Unless there are certain personal items that you want to keep, you know, that you use over and over again. If you were interested in underwater biology, you might have a need for a library about fish, about coral reefs, you know, and then cameras to go underwater and film. So those would be your needs. And the more society can take care of those needs, then the better everybody's life is. Because if you have kids that are not interested in anything, and they're just going and shooting up drugs or hanging out at the corner in malls as they are today, you pay for that at the end. But if they can contribute to society, then they can contribute to your standard of living as well. So the smarter your kids are, the better your life is. So if you understood that.
Hi. Two questions, very short. The first one is, do you still believe in the Illuminati? The second one is, what is Global Cyber Visions Incorporated?
Do you believe in the Illuminati?
I believe they should be eliminated.
Global Cyber Visions? Is that what you're saying? He was asking what Global Cyber Visions was. We couldn't get anybody to publish our books or our videos. Jacques was going to be on the Discovery Channel in a film called Engineering the Impossible. And we were trying to get his book published. And we wanted it published on time for that film. Nobody would take it. So we published it ourselves. We put our own money into publishing it ourselves. And we named our publishing division, because it had to be on the book. There's all sorts of restrictions. You have to do ISBN numbers and everything else when you publish a book. So the name of our business for publishing is called Global Cyber Visions.
Why is that a profit organization?
That's a profit organization because at that time, we never had anybody to help support us financially. I held an outside job to build the whole 10 acres, to publish our books, to get our videos. Jacques gave lectures for money in order to support ourselves. We have to pay rent, we have 10 buildings on our research center, and we did everything. At the time, we looked into doing a non-profit, but we found that if we had to sell our land since we were carrying on our business there, then that land would have to be given to somebody else's non-profit. We had no support. We would not do that at that time. And in order that we were advised to incorporate, because if you incorporate, if you happen to be sued, and a lot of people get sued in the United States if you're carrying on business, then they couldn't take your land, and we would not risk that for the land.
Hello. I heard an idea by Carl Sagan that about planets that seem dead, that in their polar ice caps, it's possible to unlock an atmosphere. What are your thoughts on that? An atmosphere that a planet that once had an atmosphere, but through various climatic changes has escaped. But he claims, or has an idea, that it's somehow locked up in the poles, and that it's possible to unlock that atmosphere. Is that possible?
I'm not sure if I got the question. Carl Sagan is stating...
Yeah, Carl Sagan said an idea that planets that, like Mars, for example, had like polar ice caps. And they said that once they had like an atmosphere, rivers and stuff. But once the atmosphere is gone, he said that it was locked up in ice caps. It's possible to unlock them. So
He's asking if in other planets is it possible to unlock ice caps and the environment would come out. There are a lot of scientists that are speculating things on other planets and spend a lot of time about particle manipulation and movement on other planets. But we feel that if they were really scientists, they'd be working on solving the problems on this planet and then going into outer space as a joint venture, because you can be assured that if you go into outer space now as separate countries, then you're going to have nuclear armament circling around up there. We're not wise enough to use our technology effectively. So we don't speculate about that. We're trying to make this system livable.
Okay, well once humans eventually move on,
then they will be dealing with that. They'll have new technologies, they'll have new materials, and they can better determine that.
So it's not like possible now.
We're not concerned with it. There's an awful lot to be done before we go up there.
Hi. I understand that there's going to be a lot of robotics deciding on how these cities are going to function, or not deciding, perhaps managing the cities. There would have to be some level of management somewhere, wouldn't there,
Would there be a level of management in the city? Some level, somebody overseeing? Is that what you're asking?
I hope you understand this example. The electronics that deal with agriculture have their electrical tentacles into the soil. And if the water table drops, that pumps water out there. So the system is rigged electronically to monitor all areas of the city. For example, there are many people here that have devices. They walk up to their house and the lights go on. They don't have to turn them on. They drive up, the garage door opens. We hope to automate most aspects of the city, so you don't have to do that.
That will be most parts of the city. There's going to be certain times when there kind of needs to be a management level to deal with.
There is no management people. The system is automated. Do you know what that means?
What about if you had a natural disaster or something?
If we have a national disaster, there's special contingency people and resources. As much as they need is allocated. They don't have to go and report to anybody. They go and take care of the problem immediately. They don't have to ask kids to bring cans of soup or put in nickels and dimes to feed the starving who have a flood disaster. There are people that take care of the job immediately all over the world.
We use the North and South Pole to store surplus food that's dehydrated. We do that from all the nations that produce a surplus. We store it at the North and South Pole. The contingency department have the right to act immediately. If there's an earthquake in Japan, they don't have to appeal to a Congress, right? They go and they access that food and deliver it by air to Tokyo right away. That's what I mean by caring. In other words, if people want to know where I got all these ideas from, I got them from the human body. If the brain said, I do all the thinking, I want all the nutrients, the lungs would say, if I don't oxygenate the blood, the brain would die. So the brain says, what do you need? Everything you need. Every organ of the body is cared for and given whatever it needs to function. That's where I got the idea for the Venus Project.
Maybe if you get at the end of the line so they can answer that question. Thank you.
Is there potentially, if the Venus Project was a success, is there potential that that would in turn create a hell of a lot of waste? For instance, what would happen to our existing buildings, cars, structures, transportation, everything that exists now? If the Venus Project was put into practice and we built these new cities, what would happen to everything that exists now?
It's a hell of a lot of waste.
Yeah, what happened to the existing system that doesn't work? If this became redundant and the Venus Project was successful and we now all lived in the Venus Project cities, what would happen to the existing houses, buildings, structures, cars, everything?
What will happen to the existing
existing cities, we hope to level most of them. They're inefficient, but we'll mine them for glass, steel, whatever we can get, and build new cities. Because you can't sustain a city like this. Every building a different size, which means me for myself. That tells you what the population is like. If you see a city that's made of geometry sectors, you know that it's well thought out. You look at a bunch of thatched huts, you know they're primitive people down there. They even have songs. I love New York City. New York is one gigantic collection of chaos. But if you're brought up in it, you know nothing else. I don't know if you know this. If you save horses from a burning barn, take them out, they run back to the barn. It's the only security they've known. That's why people get attached to France, all the Eiffel Tower, the balconies with all the grill work. That's a waste of resources. In an earthquake, that's the stuff that kills people. All the gargoyles and heads and all the crap you have hanging on the building fall and kill people. But they don't understand those things. So we talk of functional cities that render maximum service. I just want to say one more thing. Here's how you pick your house in the future. You sit in front of a plastic bubble, and you sit, that's the architect. You say, oh, it's computerized. I want a house. And it says to you, what kind of house? Most people say, I'm not sure, which is true. So different houses appear and rotate until you say stop. That's a type of house you're in. But you want to see the floor plan, the roof lifts on. And you say, can you move the children's room next to the adult bedroom? And it moves as you talk. So you get exactly the kind of house you want.
What happens to the waste that's created by building, by polishing? It's all recycled.
It's recycled into books or whatever else we make it. Rooftops, photoelectric cells, whatever we can make of it. Recycled.
Hi, my name is Robert Howes. Roxanne, you've sent me an email. I haven't replied to it. You might remember sending it. Yeah.
You can't always do that.
But you've read my ideas on anthology of ideas?
I'm not sure. I have to...
As far as I understand, that's where you saw my stuff and you sent and you wrote to me. I think somebody recommended you to me. My question is simply, how can we work together? I've got my own project, but I'm the only person in it at the moment.
We'll meet after this and we'll talk.
Okay.
Hi, as you probably can hear, my mother tongue is not English, and my question is about languages. If we look at everything globally and we harvest the planet's resources together without any borders and countries, what language are we going to speak? What language are we supposed to teach our children?
I don't know if you'll understand the answer, but I'll try to give it to you. We breathe, and we take in here air, and then we exhaust it. When we speak in sentences, because we have to take a deep breath. But if you had a turbo lung, you know, that took in air constantly, your speech would be like that constant sound. We can't be that efficient because if you teach people how wonderful the human body is, you arrest their development. We point out that the nose did not stick out. When people fall, they damage the cartilage, and you have sinus problems, all kinds of problems. So if there were just two holes that went upward, that would be more efficient. But normal people say, my God, how awful. They get, if everybody had a nose a foot long, you'd have surgery done. Do you understand that? Because you'd look like a freak. So there's really no such thing as beauty, except that you're brought up in a given culture. If you're brought up in a culture where a guy has a bone through his nose, that's beauty to you. Or you bangy big lips. There's no such thing as beauty. Each person, they all tell you beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. The eyes of the beholder, really, is it? In other words, is there such a thing as beauty? I don't think so. But if you're brought up in a given culture, your mother looks beautiful, whether they're Ubangi or Mexican or Filipino, whatever they are. But if you believe there's one kind of beauty, which the movies push us all the time, that's where you get it from. There's no such thing as beauty. If you marry a very good-looking guy in your terms, and he turns out to be a son of a bitch, that face becomes ugly. Do you understand what I'm talking about? If you marry a girl that you love the looks of, and she's a pain in the ass, that face becomes repulsive. There's no such thing as beauty. But that's not easy for normal people to understand. Normal means fucked up. We would make sounds that would be based upon physical reference only, not your feelings. Let me say this. People think human beings have feelings. We are against that. Let me tell you why. So you have to listen. If your kids are trapped in a car, and you say, oh my God, the gasoline is going to go out, and they're going to get burned, and I can't open the door, and all that's emotions. But if you break the window and take your kids out, that's emotions converting to action. That's what we're interested in. We're not interested in emotions. We're interested in action. Meaning, I saw 2 planes hit midair. The minute they hit, I ran to the hangar, got in the Jeep, put a fire extinguisher in it, and headed out for where the plane fell, and used a fire extinguisher. I saved a lot of lives that way. But, oh my God, they're hit, they're falling, I hope they bail out. That's emotions. One is called cortical behavior, when you do something about it, and the other is called thalamic, when you say, oh my God, the kid's drowning out there, I hope somebody does something. You're the somebody, do something. You understand? Convert your emotions to a deed. If you don't like war, march against it. Teach people against it. But if you just do it privately, it doesn't do any good.
No, it's just my last question. Basically, it's to do with the misuse of resources and the attainment of resources, and perhaps the possible use people may use for these resources. And basically, do you see an issue arising, or is there any safeguards against the misuse of resources for the abuse of power?
There is no misuse of resources in terms of the way you're thinking of it today. There's no advantage. The whole idea is trying to make abundance, using goods and services for the benefit of people. The whole direction is very different than what it is today. Today, you do have people that misuse resources because they make money from it. There's no advantage of that in the future. The direction of society is to house, clothe, feed, produce good education and medical care for people. That's the direction, not the acquisition of wealth, property, and power. So you eliminate a lot of the aberrant behavior that you have today.
I can see you changing a lot of people's minds, and a lot of people's mindset will change that way. There is always going to be a group of people.
There isn't always going to be that group. There's no advantage for that group. That group is non-existent as the system goes on.
I can see a group, perhaps, of possible people coming together to collect resources, to use technology, to use these resources, and then possibly
collect resources and use them and abuse other people.
In your head, that's true. Not in our project.
No, I'm not saying universally or the project would aspire.
You have to learn more about the project. I have to say, we don't have that time right now to go into it further so you have a better understanding.
There ain't no safeguards, so I'll stop that.
Hi both. My quick question is, what's your take on free will?
What's your take on free will?
If free will means without a prime effect, free will means making decisions because you have the ability to make a decision and nothing else affects it. You're born that way. Free will cannot exist. If you ask an Eskimo, you can have anything you want. He doesn't say a stainless steel dome. He can't say that. He doesn't even know it exists. So there can't be free will. Free will means if you buy a Kennedy rocking chair, it's the most uncomfortable chair in the world if you sat in one. So people who see President Kennedy sitting in it say, I think I want one of those. That's influenced by advertising, movies, all your choices. They show movie actors driving Mercedes. An important person driving, say, I want a Mercedes. That affects your choice, where you're brought up. If you're brought up in Japan, you might bow when you see a person. The person says, you don't have to bow, you'll still bow. You understand what I mean? That's a cultural thing. Cultural thing is when the president says, God bless America. Who the hell is he to tell God who to bless? If God made everybody, and you tell God who to bless, is he working for you? How stupid people are. You really have to respect them.
Hello. I'd like to pick up on a question that someone asked earlier about scrapping present cities and moving to your new efficient cities. I'm from a city called York in the north of England. It's a very beautiful city, 2,000 years old with a lot of heritage. And I just kind of feel that this wholesale scrapping of what admittedly is an efficient city would be a kind of loss of human culture. Is there not some level of like coexistence between the extremely efficient but still keeping some of these beautiful and cultural heritage places that are admittedly inefficient?
Just like the pyramids and the ancient ruins are around, we keep some of that for type of museum city to show kids what it used to be like. Wants to know if you can coexist with the new cities and the old.
There's no need to do that. It's better to build new cities elsewhere and keep some of the old cities as museum cities. The pyramids, I believe, would be covered so that the elements don't ruin them further. Same with the early Roman and Greek buildings. We want to preserve those to show kids of the future what it used to be like.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, well, in a resource-based economy, what would be there to make sure our rights aren't infringed? If there's no police or nothing like that?
If there's no police, what would make sure the rights would not be infringed?
If there's no police, what assurance do people have that their rights will not be infringed? If we raise children in school, we raise them not to be what you call greedy, self-centered. They learn how to be cooperative. There's no competition in the future. There's sharing of ideas. The reason we are, what degree of civilization we have, is because people wrote books. They write books of their experience, so you don't have to live through it again. You learn that a rattlesnake looks a certain way. If you don't know what a poisonous snake looks like, you're subject to injury. So people write books, they educate us, they inform us. So we owe our existence to many people that said never build an airplane without struts or some support, because they found out the wings would snap off if they didn't do that in the old days. Today we can build wings without braces, without wires, because we know we have new metals and new strength. So you have to update people, keep them constantly updated. But if you quit, like most people my age talk of the past, the good old days. There were never any good old days. There was starvation, burning of witches in America called the Salem witch hunts. They burned women who talked a little differently than other women, or behaved a little differently. They burned them alive. Now here's what you didn't know. If you found, for every witch you found, you inherited their bank account and their land. Did you know that? That gives you good reason to find witches. See, we don't get the truth. We think that America is a great country. We stole it from the Indians.
Do you think there's a risk of stagnation through homogenisation, or do you think cultures can coexist while retaining a certain individuality of thought?
Do you think there's a risk of stagnation and everybody would be the same?
Okay. You have 2 eyes, not 6 eyes. Most people have 2 eyes, similar nose, pretty much the same. Because nature evolved that as a useful shape. You know? So in the future, I will say that most people will be alike in certain areas. They'll all be against war. They'll all be against any kind of racism. They'll all be against polluting the oceans, the rivers, and the air. They'll be alike in those areas.
But they'll retain a certain sense of individuality.
There's no such thing. An individual does not exist. Everybody is composite. If you live with a Filipino family, then you moved in with a German family, you'll pick up a little bit of both systems. And the Greek family you're born in. You know what I mean? We're all composite. There's no such thing as individuality. If you met an individual, you couldn't talk to him. Sometimes they tell a person in the court of law, tell me in your own words what happened. Bagalabuba. That's your own words. You can't have your own words. You speak the language of your culture. Do you understand that?
Hello, Jack. Roxanne, thanks for coming to Bristol. My interest is, how much are you interested in the arts as well as science?
The cities would have art centers, music centers, cultural centers. There'd be more art in the resource-based economy than what's available today. But I also think there'd be more people who are interested in science and technology and producing things. Turning, even science and technology can be considered, in a way, an art form if you're into arts, but a functional, useful art form. Today, if you make a picture and just put it on the wall and it's just very abstract, you may be conditioned to like that, but it doesn't really serve the rest of the community to house, feed, clothe, help irrigate the soils. You know what I mean? I think in a way we'll outgrow the need to feel fulfilled with that kind of art, and we get onto certain types of sciences and arts that are more productive for everyone, to make a better living for everyone. You're conditioned to feel good about certain art, but you can be conditioned to any type of art form. It just depends on your environment and what you've grown up in, but art would flourish. Today it can't, because people have to make a living. I have an art background. I couldn't make a living in it, nor anybody I knew that went to school, in my art school, could make a living at it. So I think a lot of people will go back to that, but they really learn the science of art, and I didn't learn that in school. I didn't learn it till I picked it up from the shop. That there are laws behind learning how to draw, so everyone can learn how to draw. There's nothing that people have that is special who can draw. You can learn it, and that's what we teach people too.
All of us are artists, all of us. Yes, all of us are artists. Yes,
that's right, everybody can learn that. If you have the right environment, you don't today, really.
I work with a lot of children. Say I work with about 20 kids. They all draw perfectly well. I never had any variations in ability. And in the teaching systems, if the teacher can't get to certain kids, she gives them a low grade. When you do that, you make envy and you hurt all the other kids. When you have a beauty contest, if 50 girls enter and one girl wins, 49 are unhappy. It serves no useful purpose unless the girl made her face. If she was born with a blob here and she shaped it up, you give her a medal for that. But if she didn't make her face, why give her an award? Sometimes, you go to Hollywood, you want a job in Hollywood, you have to go to bed with the producer, or you have to go to bed with the guy that picks the actresses. Well, no more of that shit, no more prostitution. Nobody has to put themselves out in some area they're not interested in. For the first time, you pick what you want to study, go to school, and study what you want to study. Not somebody giving you patriotism, our flag, our country, none of that shit anymore. The sooner you get rid of that shit, the sooner you get rid of war, hatred, racism, poverty, hunger, and all the crap that goes with it.
Hi. Do you accept that this new system cannot come about until the majority of the people want it?
We think that this system won't come about until most people lose their jobs, lose confidence in their elected leaders, and some might have to lose their homes because people aren't educated enough emotionally or intellectually to look around and say, why isn't this system working? As long as they have a job and they're feeding their kids, no matter how many jobs they might have, they're not in a position to, it's a luxury to be able to come here and listen to new ideas. Most people can't do that. So in that case, it might have to hit them directly before they look around and say there must be another alternative. And if this system is not out there enough so people look towards this system at that time, then we won't make it.
It should not be sold through the democratic process.
Well, there is no democratic process. There is no democracy. When did you ever vote on anything?
Did you vote for the Vietnam War? Ask any American, did you vote for the space program? No. They never voted for anything. Did you vote for the Brooklyn Bridge? No. They don't participate. They're giving bullshit about this as a participatory democracy. Sometimes people come to our research center and they say, I've come to help. I said, good. How would you prevent cars from hitting each other? They don't know. I said, you can't help unless you study some range of technology.
Hello again. I agree with most of the things you say. Can I just quickly say... Okay, I think what I'm going to say is important for the audience. Oh, okay. I'll go to the back. Okay.
Hi. Somebody asked a question about the language of this global world, village or whatever. I didn't get an answer. What would be...
What language would it be? We should hear that answer. Somebody asked a question about language.
A language that is free of bias, in other words, descriptive language. Instead of saying, John is a nice person, that means maybe John didn't shit on the guy, he pissed on him. What do you mean by a nice person? You know what I mean? When you say, I met a wonderful person, if you lived in a house where everybody beat the hell out of each other, and you're in a house where the guy beats his wife once a week, he's a nice guy to you. So the language is not specific enough. When a girl says, I'm in love with Bill, now what the hell does that mean? It doesn't tell me anything. If she says, Bill knows more about chemistry, which is my major area of interest, that tells me what she has in common with it. But she says, I'm madly in love, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
So do you mean that there will be a new language developed?
The language has to be referential. That's why I recommend semantics. Are you familiar with it? Semantics is the meaning of words, how people use language. You can get up and say something you believe in, the guy will shoot you for it, because he was brought up to think differently than you about the same words. You know what I mean? So language, like I said before, I try to tell you And when a person says to me, I'm a nature lover, I say, you know, I love earthquakes, hurricanes, and all that. That's all natural too. You understand? I have to know what they mean. So you have to ask people when they say, I believe in Jesus Christ and nobody else. You have to ask them, why do you accept Jesus above everybody else? Mohammed and well, they usually say, well, I think he was correct. But what does Mohammed believe? I don't know. Then how do you know that? In other words, you have to be a cross-examiner. If you really want to understand it, you can't just listen to people. You have to question them. The person says, I'm an airline pilot. I like flying a Boeing. I say, why? Well, have you flown a Lockheed? No. Have you flown this? How do you know Boeing's the best? You have to question. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hello, a very quick question about surveillance. I think it would be beneficial if people shared information. What's your opinion of, if we share information, then, for example, I came here in a car where there were 2 empty seats. I could have taken someone here who I don't know if I wanted to help them, and on the journey back I could do the same. If I want to, I could broadcast that information, but you may see that as, if you're against that kind of thing and you think it's surveillance. What's your opinion on surveillance?
You have to pinpoint your sentence. I mean, your statement. What's your question? You're making a lot of statements and no question. So if you can gather just one sentence of what your question is, that would be better. We could understand you, both of you.
Hello. Yeah, the Venus Project sounds like a good thing, but it sounds like it needs a large dollop of collectivism, and I'm just wondering if the Venus Project intends on using microchips and implants on the population.
What's about the use surveillance, microchips, implants on the population?
No, not at all.
Hi. In this society, you'd have more equality, no money, people who have their needs satisfied, and thus there will be less crime. But still, for me at least, it's reasonable to admit that there will be always a few criminals, a few. And so, how do you cope with them without prisons, without laws? How do you cope with this few? Because in 6 billions of people, there would be certainly.
He indicates that there will always be aberrated behavior, always be some criminals. That's if there's brain damage. And if there's brain damage, then they're helped. They're not put in prison. That's the answer. In other words, if you get a tumor in the temporal lobe, you might not be able to hear on the left ear or right ear. So we work on cultivating brain tissue. So if a portion of the brain is removed, the frontal lobes where you have most feelings, if that's removed, we will try in the future to cultivate brain tissue. If you don't understand that, I heard an anatomist describe to medical students why we can't graft an arm onto a person. This was about 40 years ago. So I said, sir, if we put a glass tube in the vein and artery and kept the arm alive to artificial circulation, and then grafted it on, and then when it took, cut out the artificial. He said, do you work at our research center? I said, no. He said, you should. I said, never say to medical students, we'll never be able to graft an arm on. Say this, I can't see how that can be done. I can't see how we can get to the moon. But don't say we'll never get to the moon. We'll never colonize Mars. Say, I can't see how that can be accomplished. Do you understand? Or I don't know how that can be accomplished. But when you get up and say, man will never be able to replace the human eye, that's your limitations you're talking about, not other people's. I see no limitations to what man can do. I think they can solve almost every problem that they put their mind to if they work at it. not hope somebody else will.
Hello, I'm totally with you, by the way. I think we're all in it together and totally support what you're doing. I'm just questioning a few things that I think need to be questioned. One of the questions is about the time frame that we have. And basically, we've got climate crisis, we've got planetary emergency. And this vision, which I totally support in many ways, is so far into the future. Well, relatively speaking, it is, when you look how conditioned people are in the society today. It's going to take an enormous shift in people's consciousness, people's investments in banks, people's investments in their belief systems. So what can we do in the meantime? Because we're in an emergency, because we have an urgency of change. So to build this city is going to be so far, it's going to take... So what do we do in the meantime? It's going to take such a while to build this city. What can we do to create sustainability in the meantime for the urgency that we all face on the planet today? Okay, thank you.
Anything you can do for sustainability is just fine. People who are making their own gardens or who are putting up solar panels, this is fine. He's asking what we do in the meantime for sustainability. But as I said before, this does not take care of the problem. This does not pose a solution. It's a whole new social direction that we need. And if we don't work towards it while you're making solar cells and hydroponics, then we're not going to make it into the future, into a real sustainable future.
Thanks for your time. Do you think that developing language is key to developing the way we think?
I think developing language is key to developing the way we think.
Yes, it is.
Okay, this will be the last one then.
When are you hoping to get your movie out, and do you think it'll be out before the economic collapse of global economic affairs?
Yeah, he asked when would the movie be out. Well, we don't really have control of that right now, but we're working on it. We're working on meeting with people that maybe can make that happen, but we don't really have that kind of control. We look at it, the film as really social therapy, giving people a direction to work towards. We feel it's very urgent and very, very important. But Peter Joseph is working on another film, and that will be out by the end of the year. But the other one that we'd like to do is get to the a majority of people, the general public.
I want to thank all of you for being here, and I hope that you've learned something. And if you do nothing when you leave here, nothing will happen. So try to talk to people about the Venus Project. We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to hurt anybody. We think that the capitalists today will live better under the Venus Project than they do in the monetary system.
Well, from the Bristol Zeitgeist Movement, thank you very much, Jack, for visiting our town and spending the time to sit here and patiently answer our questions. I think you handled that tremendously, and it's been a great honour to listen to you, and I'm sure we all reflect that.
I just want to mention, as Andrew Buxton brought up to us, that for people who didn't get their questions answered, as I mentioned before, we have over 70 pages of questions and answers on our website. Yeah, okay.
And of course, there's the Zeitgeist Movement itself. We're a collective of learning people who exchange ideas and information and discuss material. And so there is great support that we have online, so please check out the website, thezeitgeistmovement.com. Both there's international chapters and there's a UK chapter, and that even goes down to regions. We both meet in person, so we have local meetings. We meet also online using video conferencing. There's a forum where we exchange ideas, and there's a host of resources and material, an opportunity to learn it more, and to learn more, and to help spread the message. So please, when you go home today, at the very least, check out the Zeitgeist Movement website. And thank you very much for coming.